Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Wait, today is November 6th, National Nachos Day. It's been a minute since we've recorded.
So
I've fallen off the routine.
I'm ranked... First is Zach Badger Davis. Second is Nacho Day. Third comes Chauncey. That's my ranking?
I'm redoing it. We're doing nachos first, and then me.
Okay.
I want to be connected to the nachos, beneath the nachos.
Sick. I'm third either way.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chauncey.
Zach Badger Davis. This is already a train wreck of an episode.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes from here. Excited about today's guest. Do you have any thoughts on nachos? What's your go-to nacho topping?
Like standard. They just come out.
There's meats,
perfect.
Options.
Pulled pork.
See, there you go. I knew you had something spicy in there.
I thought you wanted me to list out the toppings. I was like, I don't even know that.
Yeah. I would go brisket.
Okay. Less saucy.
Yeah. The thing with nachos, though, is when they use the liquid cheese, it's disgusting. I need real cheese.
Yes, I do like real cheese, unless what they're doing is queso. That's a liquid cheese that I will let them pour on my nachos.
Yeah, that's a higher quality cheese. Okay, we're doing great. Reminders of any kind before we get to today's interview. Yes, if you are passing through Denver, as is the case for today's interview, anytime, especially during the winter tends to be a little bit more challenging as people are not hiking quite as much for obvious reasons. Please hit us up. We have a form that'll be available in the show notes. Give us your best pitch. This can be for you, for a friend, for somebody that you know who's going to be passing through the area. We get some of our best guest recommendations from you guys. So please let us know if there's someone you want to hear on the show, especially if they're going to be local.
Yeah, and I would also say, even if you're someone that's like, oh, well, the only time I'd have free is this one specific afternoon, shoot your shot anyway, because we get a lot where it's like, I'm coming through town, super fast trip, I have this or nothing, like it's this night that I have free, and there's a lot of times we can make it work.
Yeah. Plus, Chauncey might be fired soon anyway, so.
Yeah, not from this, though.
No, you're definitely not fired from this.
About something.
Yeah, Chauncey, I've got something to tell you.
This is a stressful day for
me. The other thing I want to mention is the AT 2023 ThruHike Survey went live today, which isn't relevant because today is not today for you. But if you thru-hike the AT this year and would like to share your experiences for the benefit of future AT hikers, also just people who are interested in learning cool facts about the trail, please do so. I think we'll probably wrap the survey in the next couple of weeks. So if you're listening to this shortly after release, definitely get on your horse because this will not be open for too much longer. The last thing is, this is exciting for us. We get to do some fun in-person stuff, not only with our fellow local hikers, but also our team, which is a rare thing.
Yes, we are having a hiker meetup in December. It is our Combo Palooza, which is basically where we just go through our stats from the past year and pretend that like we have any business sense when talking pod. And we look at numbers and then we nod and we're like, good numbers. And then we go drink.
Yeah, we basically just get drunk for 2 days.
Yeah, but we guise it with...
Yeah, it feels productive, but mainly it's just a hangover.
Yeah. But Mara and Rachel will be here and crunching numbers and celebrating celebrations with us. So they will be at this hiker meetup in December if you want to see all your favorite pals. And we are looking for a venue that will be oodles of fun. So just stay in the loop with us on Instagram and Facebook and wherever you stalk us to keep in touch.
It'll either be Denver or Golden or somewhere between the two. And I don't know if we mentioned the date. This will be December 1st. So we have the date locked in. It's just a matter of location at this point. So mark your calendars. And then when it says location, definitely head to our social media. We'll have some clear insight by the time that this comes out, certainly. Is there anything else you wanted to mention? Patreon.
No. Oh, yeah, we have a Patreon. You can go there, and we put out bonus content every month. We do a bonus episode, and it is usually more of a get-to-know-us episode in one form or another. And it's really, really fun.
Yeah. Recent episodes include me getting very stoned and you creating some pretty fun questions for me to field. We interviewed Mara recently. We did kind of a transparent look into our process in editing our forthcoming book, Pooping in the Woods, we think. So yeah, we've done some fun stuff. If you want some additional content from Chauncey and I, head to patreon.com/backpackerradio, and we release a new episode the first Wednesday of every month. Okay, no more beating around the bush. Very excited for today's interview. Had a good chance to, since Chance was late today, I had a good chance to do the pre-interview, which has been informative and fun. We are joined by Dr. Morgan Brosnihan, who is a mobile physical therapist and thru-hiker who offers therapy services out of her van. After becoming a physical therapist in 2017, Morgan hiked the Long Trail in 2018, followed by the PCT in 2019. Since then, she has provided mobile physical therapy services to hikers along the PCT. Dr. Morgan, what's the correct way to address you?
Honestly, most people call me Blaze at
Blaze.
this point. Yeah.
Okay, let's go with
Unintentional new trail name just bestowed to me from my business name.
What was the OG trail name?
Noodles.
And how'd you get that?
My hair, when unshowered and braided for many days, looks a lot like crunchy ramen. So
Got it. Sort of like mini dreads?
a little bit, yeah. And
Nice.
it came in good timing because shortly after I almost received projectile tuna for reasons you might insinuate.
Oh.
So I was happy to have already had noodles. I held on to it hard to keep away from projectile tuna.
Cool.
That would be a really good trail name, though. Like, not for you, but for
The day
everyone but
wasn't
you.
great, but yeah. And the abbreviation of that being PT made it kind of funny. So.
Oh, wait, I kind of like that. Can we revisit this?
So was it bad tuna that got you there?
You know, it was too much tuna and then an unexpected road walk. We flipped and we ran into friends that were going the other direction. So we ate a double lunch and then like hot afternoon, 2 hours on pavement. It just.
The tuna came out.
It was overcooked.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was overcooked.
Okay, so I want to start off with your background here. I see that you've got both PT and DPT in your official title. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, so PT is just the like the licensing, so like that you pass the board exam, and then DPT is the schooling. So it's the same thing, just two separate like entities.
Got it.
And hopefully by like March, April, I'll have orthopedic certified specialists as well. I'm taking that test next year, so OCS.
So how long or how much schooling is required for these titles?
So for the PT degree, it's 7 years. So like undergrad is like 3 or 4, and then grad school is 2 or 3. So it depends how you split it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the OCS is just a test that you can take after you have, I forget the hour requirement. I think it's like 2,000 hours of orthopedic care, and then you're eligible for the test.
Is there like a fun, maybe not game, but a fun thing to do in the community where you try to see how many letters you can get after your name? Because that kind
Select
of
the whole alphabet?
well,
Yeah.
it reminds me of hikers when it's like 18, 19, PCT, you know, like when
Sure.
you just list out all your
Yeah.
There's a little
abbreviations.
bit of that, I think, especially because like in today's age, people are finding providers through like social media. So it's like, even though not nobody, but like a lot of people don't know what the letters even stand for. When you see someone's name and you see all these things, it's like, wow, they must really know something. Don't
We
know
should do
what, but
that.
something.
Yeah.
You just make them up.
So are all licensed physical therapists also doctors of physical therapy?
Some are not. If you had a PT degree like 40 years ago, you could have had just a bachelor's, and then you get grandfathered in to like continue practicing, and you have the option to bridge it to a doctorate. But if you, I don't know when they switched to full doctorate, but since that switch happened, anybody who becomes a PT now has to go the doctorate route. Which has been really good for autonomy. Like what I do with this practice couldn't have existed prior to us having like direct access and having a doctoral level, because it lets us diagnose and we don't need referrals from like a physician.
So just to give some context, in episode 101, we interviewed my pal, who's also a physical therapist, Dr. Freeborn Mondello. But I think it's cool to get multiple perspectives, and especially because you are specifically a thru-hiker, I'm sure you've got some very unique perspectives on the field of physical therapy as it relates to thru-hiking. Before we get to all that stuff, I want to know what got you into physical therapy in the first place.
So oddly enough, I was interested in geriatrics, and I've worked in geriatrics some, and it's still kind of like, if I could have my perfect world, I would have like thru-hikers in the summer and like geriatrics in the winter.
You should go work out on the AT because you can combine those things.
Yeah. Honestly, though, like the older hikers tend to take good care of themselves.
Yeah,
so
because they're smart.
Yeah, then
they
don't get like carried away with challenges and friends and
Right.
stuff like that. They do like what they know they need to
Yeah,
do.
they're not doing
Break
the
their
4-state
ACL
challenge.
hopping offense.
Yeah, things like that.
Those dumb kids.
But yeah, my I was in grad school, or in undergrad actually, for business, and I finished with a bachelor's in business, which turned out to be handy. But I was at like the end of my sophomore year, and my grandpa slipped on the ice, and he was like fine from this, but he had like a small head injury, and so I went to go see him at the hospital. And when I got there, the PT just happened to come for his like session while I was there, and that was just sort of my like aha moment when she was working with him, because I was like, oh, I want to get people like my pap moving after they do something like hit their head. And then I like went back to school that evening and like did all the research in like 2 days, and then went to my advisors and said, this is my idea. And they were like, we don't know about that. So then I had to kind of ask around and sort of figure it out myself. But then I found some of the science wing advisors that were much more encouraging. They're like, no, you can do this. And so then I just had to get a bunch of prereqs done in my next 2 years.
I was going to say, are you basically started from scratch pursuing business as your primary major?
So it wasn't too much from scratch, because I had already taken stuff like stats and some psych classes that I needed, but then basically like all the bios and anatomies and that kind of stuff I had to start taking, but I still had 2 years to knock it out. So it was like I couldn't have waited any longer and not had it be a problem. But since I figured it out at the end of my sophomore year, I was like in good shape.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people that like hike, this is good. Rephrase, that was weird. I feel like a lot of people that do things that could end up being made into a business, that also do things like trails, end up making their own businesses as a way to be able to have that flexibility to keep hiking. Do you have any tips for someone that might be like in the younger demographic of hiking that like could be looking at school and it's like, well, what do you want to go to school for? Well, I also love this hiking thing, where business seems like a good idea that can then be molded later on.
Yeah, I mean, I think one aspect of like the medical field that kind of relates to that for like the flexibility aspect is like the concept of travel contracts. So like I did travel PT whenever I did my hike, so it let me like take a contract, take a break and hike, and then take another contract. So you're like kind of your own boss in that sense, because like you're controlling a lot of the negotiations and like where you go. So that's like one way to kind of do it. And then I think like do you mean if you want to have like a business related to trail stuff, or just one that offers you flexibility?
Just one that offers flexibility. I just think like it's kind of cool to be able to take something that you like and then have your own schedule around it. And I see a lot of people doing that.
Yeah, for sure. I think if there's some kind of online component to what you're doing, that gives you the most flexibility. That's been my experience, at least, because a lot of what I do is telehealth.
Oh, okay.
And that gives me, like, the off season is all telehealth, which is why I'm in Colorado.
Yeah.
Was that new after COVID? Because I didn't know about telehealth before COVID.
COVID helped. Actually, whenever I finished trail, my plan was to just start a telehealth practice, and not necessarily for hikers. It was just like, I'm like, at that point, I was just into the van life and wanted to be able to, like, do that and live anywhere. And so I, like, took a course on telehealth. I had all the stuff set up, and that at that point was the niche in itself, was just having a telehealth practice. And then when COVID hit, every single existing practice like panicked and was like, we offer telehealth, like we have a webcam. And then it just got hugely saturated. And so then I kind of was like, okay, well, that's no longer the niche. But then it helped ultimately, because it pushed really fast like legislation advances, and like people got really on board with telehealth and a lot less skeptical of it. So that, I mean, that's been really helpful.
In terms of physical therapy, what percentage of the value do you think someone gets from a telehealth appointment relative to doing it in person? Is it 100% or is it 80%?
Honestly, I feel like it's 100 in most cases, because a lot of it is like a good diagnosis is a really good subjective, and like especially like I do think telehealth in like a really broad general population can be challenging, because people are coming in with like all kinds of lifestyle factors and chronic issues, and sometimes that's like hard to unpack in a video call. And then like there's also the buy-in, right? Like some people need you to physically be there and like take them through the stuff each time.
Yeah.
But for me in like the thru-hiker world, like people are walking all day, like their mechanism of injury, their history, all that stuff is like pretty unified. And so it's like, okay, like I get that your shin hurts. You had a huge downhill section. It's very acutely overloaded. I don't need to put my hands on it to be able to tell you what it is. And then we can like go through the stuff and what they need to do to manage it, because for them too, they're going to keep going. So like an in-person, like, I mean, I do in-person stuff and there's some extra stuff we can do, like sometimes like mobilizations and things, but usually it comes so much more down to like load management and like how they proceed going forward, that in-person or telehealth doesn't make that big of a difference.
It's got to be for like this specific group of people a lot more convenient to have that option, because to have to find a doctor, I'm holding a sneeze, while on trail and like getting to a trailhead, then getting to the doctor's office versus just finding a spot with cell reception.
Yeah, and then too, like a lot of these trail towns will have like a small town PCP, and like they do their best, but they have no idea about treating like endurance athletes. So a lot of times they give kind of like not the best advice, like they're putting people in boots and telling them to take a month off, and a lot of times that's just like woefully wrong. And it's not advice that's given with poor intentions. It's sort of they think they're taking the do no harm route, which is a big thing in the medical field, is
What's
like
that?
so like at the end of the day, when you're treating someone, your priority should be to do no harm. So like if you are like out of your bounds or like not sure what the thing is, like you should pick the path of treatment that you perceive as doing no harm. And so then by being so conservative, sometimes they're actually doing harm, because like tendonitis needs in most cases to be loaded to get better. So like just throwing a boot on someone and telling them to take a month off might not heal their tendonitis, but also might end their trip. So like in my opinion, that is harm.
Totally.
So
yeah. Would you say that physical therapists are better at diagnosing injuries relative to just a general practitioner?
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Because especially if it's a movement issue, like through hikers, they're acquiring these movement injuries, a movement specialist is the best person to diagnose and then give you a treatment plan that includes movement, versus like internal medicine doctors, which is like most PCPs. They would be more equipped to treat like chest pain and like breathing problems, or more like internal issues.
Yeah. It's so backwards, because from my health insurance, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people, they have to go through their general practitioner first, and they're going to make up some diagnosis and then send me to a physical therapist, and I'm sure the physical therapist will probably tell me something different than what the GP said.
Yeah, and a lot of times those referrals just come in and say something like foot pain. Like that's the diagnosis they're sending, and then we're the ones picking the real diagnosis.
Yeah.
And most of that is just insurance-based, because that's where like the doctoral degree gives us the autonomy that you don't actually have to go to the doctor first. And that's like a big thing in like the PT industry, is like pushing PT first, because it's been shown to cut costs like significantly, because you don't go through all these unnecessary hoops and like getting x-rays you don't need, because you go to the person who's most equipped to and ultimately would have been the one treating you anyway. So like just get the diagnosis there.
Does someone need a PPO to go that route? Because I'm not an expert. I'm done with this stuff. Let me say it more accurately. But I think, isn't it with an HMO, you have to go get the referral from your doctor first, even if you're going to a specialist who's qualified to deal with this specific issue?
It depends on your insurance, pretty much. Some insurances will let you go for 30 days without a doctor's referral, and sometimes you don't need more than 30 days, especially if you go when something's acute. Like a lot of the trail injuries I see are better in like 5 to 14 days. That's a pretty average healing time. And so like if you can go when it's acute, you only had to do 1 or 2 visits and then it's done with, versus waiting to get into the doctor, getting a referral, and then finally getting to PT. Now you're like in the chronic phase of things, because it's just limped along unhelped for so long.
Yeah. There's been a lot of instances where I haven't gone to the doctor just because I dread the full process involved with it.
Right.
Like I know the internal medicine doctor is not going to have the answer for me, and just like, who has time for that?
I can like understand how our medical system uses PCPs as sort of like the organizer of care, but I think it's getting kind of outdated, because we do have so many specialists that like, and people are getting like specialists are making it easier to get direct access to them. So it's kind of making that a little bit better. But then it's insurance that muddies the waters. And that's why like my stuff's not insurance. I use like sliding scales and other things to make it financially accessible, but they just take insurance completely out of the book.
Well, I wanted to get to more in your background, but we're on the subject and it's very interesting because I saw on that outside article that you charge, and maybe the rates have changed, so please correct me, but anywhere between $50 and $100 per session. Yeah. Which for what the service is feels like a steal. Like,
it's definitely on the low side of like what PT is valued on a street level, but I mean, for me, I want people to like get the care. Like, I don't want them to like sacrifice their hike because they're like going back and forth about like a $20 difference. So it's just kind of like just do it. Sure. And then,
is this like a hiker special? Like, is it for hikers or is it just anyone who wants PT?
So the mobile services at this point are just hikers, although I have had a couple random incidents of like somebody seeing my van in town and being like, can I have, and I'm like, I mean, yeah. I have to like explain the setup a little bit, right. But like,
I've been trail angeling too hard.
Yeah. Like one woman found me at a camp spot outside of Sisters and like came up and was like, I just moved here and I'm looking for a PT, and I was just like, I mean, sure.
Is it a different rate for somebody who's not a hiker? Like,
so I still offer the sliding scale because I mean I really believe in like financial flexibility in that sense, because at the end of the day, people who can pay it typically do, and then people who can't pay it pay what they can, and I usually end up fine. Like it hits like the middle point and like it's right where I would need to be. And then sessions for hikers are also not as long because we don't have to go into this like really in-depth like chronic injury, illness history background in most cases. It's like, hey, I walked the aqueduct and I did the Tehachapi challenge and now my shin hurts, and it's like, okay. So it's like just much more to the point. And then, but I have telehealth rates that they're a little more set. But honestly, even still, like, I guess I'm just a bleeding heart in some ways, because if someone's just like, I can't afford that, but I could afford this, I'm like, okay, fair.
Yeah. And it also mentioned in that article that you are making more at this lower rate relative to what you'd be making working like through a traditional office. How did the economics of that work?
Companies just don't pay you that much. They profit hard off of overworking their PTs. And so, like, I don't have to work as many hours to make more money doing this because I'm making the full value. Yeah. Because like for perspective, because I feel like pay transparency is like a good conversation to have. But like when I worked in Pittsburgh, I would have to like fight to be paid somewhere between like 35 and 41 for like a doctoral degree. But like PT sessions are like $150 an hour. So there's a lot of money not going to the provider.
Does it still balance out when you think about like working for yourself, needing to provide your own health care and like all those added costs? Does it still work out to more for you?
I just have really bad insurance, but yeah.
I am the doctor.
I have catastrophe insurance, so I just have like an insane deductible. Unfortunately, I just don't have any medical problems. So
yeah, I'm on the marketplace as well. That's super interesting. So I also imagine, because Let's first tell us the specifics. We've talked about you working with hikers, but we haven't talked about the specifics of your setup. So walk us through that.
Yeah. So like the dynamic is that I come down to Campo in the beginning, and then there's a campground now called Cleef. It's always been there, but they're getting like more involved with PCT hikers, which is kind of a cool thing in itself. It gives me like some guest ideas for you guys. So we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so they're hosting people, and the PCT Southern Terminus shuttle is a relatively new business, and they shuttle people from San Diego to the trail. And so this whole like dynamic at the beginning of the trail is happening where people are staying there the night before, like half a mile from the terminus, and then starting early. So in the very beginning, I just start by giving like injury talks, and I'm like, hey, these are the injuries I see in the first 100 miles. This is a lot of stuff you could do to not become part of that big statistic. And like just some other like helpful things. So if they like run into something, they're like, oh, maybe this is that lacing thing, I can just change real quick, so they can like help themselves as they go. And then as like the season starts to build and people are just like, there's enough people on trail, then I start getting like the injury calls, and I will move like kind of like, if you look at the bubble, it's usually like a 4-week span of people. And I try to get like in front of it and then let them pass, and then sort of do like 2 steps forward and then occasionally 1 back kind of dynamic. But it kind of just depends where people are calling me from. Like if 8 people call me from Tehachapi and I'm in Wrightwood and nobody's needing anything really in Wrightwood, I'll just move and then I'll stay there for a couple weeks. But so I'll do, if they're in the same town, we'll do like mobile services. And so they'll just, now I have a big van. I didn't used to have a big van, but now they meet me at my van and it's big enough to like do the whole session inside. And then if they're in a different town, then we just set up a telehealth call and then go through this stuff.
When you're giving these talks at Cleef, are these free talks? Do you ever feel conflicted about giving information that is going to prevent you from...
There's always going to be injured people no matter how much information I put out there.
Do people seem receptive to what you're saying?
Usually, yeah. It's a good way to kind of just build rapport too, to give them help, because then when they need help, if they do need help later, they're more likely to like reach out. And I ultimately like that people feel comfortable like shooting me a message, and because sometimes I'll just answer stuff if it's like something very small. And then and sometimes those conversations turn into like, do you want to just chat, like let's just do a video call, and they're like, oh, I can do that. And so it's like, it's a good just sort of casual dynamic. I guess there's a certain point where that could become too much, but there's only so many people that hike, so I don't think that it could get too overwhelming. I mean,
sure.
Knock on wood. But.
I feel like that's a good strategy because you build that credibility in the beginning, and then they have you in the back of their mind so that when they twist that ankle, they're like, oh, shit, what was her name?
Yeah, I hear from a lot of hikers that like as soon as somebody limps or like acts a little bit hurt, then people are just like, have you called Blaze?
Business idea for you. You should make shoelaces that have your phone number and info on them, and then because like what do hikers want to add to their pack? Nothing.
That's
what are
hilarious.
they already using? Shoelaces.
Actually, this is the main thing I give to hikers, this free shower sticker of Honey. Because she's always like licking hikers. And then and then I have the van stickers, one of the other ones. I usually have those on the table at Cleef.
That's cool.
Cute.
But
the doggy in the window.
Yeah, a lot of people have hiked Honey to the terminus, so that's pretty fun.
Another business idea for you: instead of a bat signal, you should put out a blaze signal when you're near the trail.
Yeah.
Honey signal.
Yeah.
That's kind of the funny thing about having a giant red van, because like I got a red van by accident when I first got my van. It was just like I went to go look at the classic white Sprinter, but it was like a rusted piece of junk and was still $16,000. And then this red van was like in great shape, only 5 years old, and was like $9,000. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have a red van. And then now it's like sometimes I don't park at trailheads to work at them. I park there occasionally to like sleep and then go into town. But people will like come down and see my van from the distance and come knock on my door, and they'll be like, I can't believe you're here. I saw the red van from like a mile away.
It's 2 a.m. Leave me alone.
Yeah, so that's my like bat signal, is just having a blatantly red van.
Yeah. So you'll be rocking the red vans now moving forward. You have to.
Oh yeah. When I got my new Transit, I like intentionally got red at that point because it's, it's a thing now. So
pretend like Chance and I are bright-eyed, bushy-tailed hikers at Campo, and you're about to give the talk. Obviously, I'm assuming we can't do the full talk, but maybe give us the Cliff's Notes or like one section of it that you think is really important to relay.
Yeah, I try to touch on. So I wrote an ebook about injury trends, because there's like certain injuries that happen in like really high concentrations at certain points in the trail, like Mount Laguna, so like 40 miles ish in, a lot of people get IT band pain, and it's because it's like a big up and down, and if their packs are way too heavy, which is a lot of times in the very beginning the case, because people are still sort of like deciding what they will or won't bring, and so they're like, well, I'll just take it all and then mail it home, and it's like sometimes that bites people and they end up with a lot of IT band stuff.
Like someone carrying a hammock on the PCT.
Shut up. Who would do something like that?
Shut up.
There's no trees on the PCT.
Guys, I do it to make myself relatable, okay? I knew the whole time it was silly.
But yeah, so I like touch on some of those trends and sort of give them an idea of the beginning, and then like let them know like this is a book of resources that if you want to follow it, then that exists. And then talk a lot about gait, because people tend to overstride, which is really an overlap with running, because a lot of running injuries are related to overstriding. And so we just talk about like just shorten your step, like just simple, just reel it in and like feel silly at first and then kind of get used to the difference in how you feel and find your perfect stride, but know that your like daily unloaded stride might already be too big. And so they kind of like go out from the terminus with that thought, and that can prevent a lot of like shin and knee stuff.
Plus, if they've got a pedometer, it'll boost their stats.
Right, yeah. And then they can have like obnousous amounts of steps, like
Totally.
100,000 steps for the day.
Exactly.
And then we talk about
I feel targeted.
then we talk about like little fixes that are nice to know. Like I usually show them a couple lacing techniques and then let them know where there's like video resources I have where they can like download it if they want to just keep that for later. And then we talk about not racing to keep up with people that you just meet because you like them, because I can promise that the people behind you are cool and so are the people in front of you, and like trail fams are amazing, but they're if you're not ultimately hiking the same pace with the same goals, they're not going to be sustainable. So if you end your hike by trying to keep up with them in the first 300 miles, now you won't meet anybody. So
what if it's an intense love interest?
You know, I have seen so many injuries related to love interest, and it's so funny.
Yeah, it better work out. It'll make for a hell of a story at the wedding, but if that's the thing that brings you off trail, womp womp.
Yeah, it's almost always a guy trying to keep up with a girl that gets injured, which is funny to me.
Yeah.
Love a good pink blaze.
Yeah.
What is like tell us a story or two about the most messed up person you've seen like hobble up to you.
Yeah, so there's a few. I saw more fractures this year, not like bone out of skin fractures, but like I think maybe because it was my second season that people were like, oh, this girl saves hikes, so like maybe this foot pain isn't a fracture like I think it is, and she'll tell me something else, and then I look at their foot and I'm like, oh, it's broken. Like, you gotta get an x-ray. But this one woman last year, I like never got over what happened with her knee, because she stepped down like the third rung of a bunk bed, which, a side tangent is, so many people get hurt in town. So many.
You mean when alcohol's involved?
Mostly the worst injuries are in town.
Yeah.
But
when
she's
we're wearing Crocs and waddling around.
Right.
Yeah. And then so she stepped down off like the third rung of a bunk bed and just had like a little twinge in her knee. And then we're looking at it and it's like, you know, some of these tests are positive, but then she's like walking on it, so it's like that doesn't really make sense. And then like her pain levels are like tolerable, so it's like, well, I don't know. It was like a really ambiguous picture of her knee, but it was like clearly something was off. And so we decided to like, she actually ended up riding with me to Hemet from Ottawa because I needed new tires. And I was like, oh, just come on, I'll take you to urgent care, full service. And so she ended up getting an MRI, and she had like torn her MCL. She had a bursitis, which was one thing that we were like pretty sure she had, but I didn't think she had all this other stuff. But
just from an awkward step down off of
awkward step down, MCL, meniscus, bursitis, and a fracture.
Damn.
Right? But this woman is so tough because she's just walking on it.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
Did she hear a pop when that happened?
No, it like didn't make any sense how that much damage happened. Yeah. And so then, you know, the hike ended up being over for like longer term rehab. But then, speaking of town injuries, there's some people that like I've seen rib and back fractures from the bird scooters in Tahoe.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We had a conversation once about how nothing is funnier than watching someone eat shit on one of those.
Yeah, and I've almost been that person.
Yeah.
More times than I can count.
I'm so afraid when I'm on them.
Yeah.
It's a great way to end your through hike.
Yeah. The Venn diagram overlap of me riding those things and alcohol consumption is basically a perfect circle. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So many different directions to go. So we were chatting a little bit beforehand. You mentioned things that people could do to lessen their instance of injury in that talk before. But we were also chatting about specific like training and exercises that people could do before they get to Campo if they had a little bit of foresight.
Ideally that's when the prevention starts, not at Campo.
Yeah.
But
so what are, broadly speaking, what are the things that people should do, and then maybe we can narrow in on some specific exercises?
Yeah, so weight training is something that's really undervalued, and part of that is like a cultural thing, I think, because a lot of thru hikers are very nomadic, so like not having gym access or living in cars and not having equipment, that seems to be a pretty prevalent thing. But also it's people who enjoy outdoor rec as their like fitness of choice. So a lot of them don't want to go to a gym, and so that leads to like a pretty big deficit in the amount of weight training that's happening for thru hikers. And it's really kind of a bummer and something that I'm trying to like sort of encourage a little bit more, because the main thing that you can do for yourself to make your tendons and your bone stronger, because tendonitis is the most common injury, like as an overarching like umbrella, and then like bone injuries like stress fractures are usually trail ending. They're like at least 5 weeks typically to let them heal. So if you had a really early start, you might be able to get back out in the same season, but it's typically pretty detrimental. But loading your bones and tendons with like a sufficient external weight does make them stronger and more resilient. So it's like the best way you can reduce those injuries. But then if like access to like a full gym or weights is just not there, even using like odd objects, like load up your backpack, because I assume you have that at some point in your training, like put heavy stuff in it and like do weight training that way. So it doesn't have to look so much like being in a barbell like squat rack, although that's great if it does. But yeah, loading up and then like going out for practice hikes is a little undervalued. But also if you're, you know, early March or anytime in March or early April, you might be living somewhere in the dead of winter. So like hiking might not be your training.
Yeah. In terms of lifting weights, so I know things with really high repetitions typically correlates with like muscular endurance. Things sort of like in the moderate rep range is more hypertrophy training, and then the lower rep range where you're using very heavy weights is typically considered like strength training. Is there one modality that is best for preparation for a thru hike?
So ultimately, as long as you are hitting at least 70% of like your max, so either your 1 rep or 10 rep max, then you're more likely to get adaptations. Because sometimes people will use too light of weights and not do enough reps with it. So like I think maybe the easiest way to simplify it is just when you're exercising, whatever your weight is that you have access to, you should try to take it within like 3-ish reps to fatigue. And then you're likely to be hitting that threshold where you're getting those adaptations. And there's a lot of nuances to that in the sense of like how to make that progressive and like when to deload and stuff. But just to give people like a better starting point, because like I guarantee if you are in this shape to be able to go do a thru hike, you need more than 10 pounds on your squat.
Yeah.
So, but if you only have 10 pounds, you can do a lot of reps and still get pretty close to muscle fatigue and then still get more benefit out of it.
Sure.
But if you just hit a generic like 3 sets of 10 and your weight's not heavy enough, then you're...
Yeah. So considering that training is so important in terms of staving off injury, which takes a lot of people off trail, I would think that most people could justify spending out in Denver, even where it's very expensive. You can get a gym membership for $30. Spending that money on a gym membership. Let's pretend that somebody has access to a gym that they can afford. They've got access to all the tools and toys, and maybe let's say they can dedicate 3 hours per week to specifically strength training. How would you design the ideal protocol for someone like that?
Yeah, that's great. So one thing I think is really helpful to build like the base of a program is to make sure you're covering like the 6 functional movements. So like say you were doing just like 3 days a week, I would hit and I'll name them, the 6 functional movements on all 3 of those workouts, and then add in accessory stuff that's different in each one of those. So the 6 functional movements, this is always fun to do without writing it down, is a squat, a hinge, a step, a push, a pull, and a carry. And so you basically like can put a list of exercises under all of those and then just pick one and make sure you have all 6 in each day, and then do stuff like banded ankle things and like heel raises, and definitely don't forget that you have arms, because even though they're not like huge in the need for a thru hike, people do get a fair amount of shoulder pain. So like things like loaded carries are a really good bang for your buck. So if you hold weights, like heavy weights down at your side, and then do either like high knee marches or just walking with them, and it should be like heavy enough that it's hard to do like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But
so
that's
like a farmer's carry style.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's like so many spin-offs of farmer's carries that you can get into to keep it like fun.
Yeah.
But that can help a lot with some of that like upper trap pain people get from like the pressure of their pack all day. So I would definitely have like a shoulder focus and just like back shoulder. And then hips are the other one. So I'd say like if your accessory stuff was to be split up into 3 supplemental things, I would do like ankle, shin, stuff like that, hips, and then like a kind of back and shoulder chunk.
Got it. So you said squat, hinge, push, pull, carry. What was the 6th one?
Step, which
Okay.
could be like lunges or step ups.
Yeah.
So like think single leg pushing things.
Yeah. Okay. So someone listening to this, squat, back squat or front squat. Hinge would be something like a deadlift.
Yep, deadlift or a single leg deadlift. I really like, if you're going for bang for your buck when you're training for a through hike, single leg variations are really good to focus on because they'll help you get some imbalances sort of in check.
That's great. Push, bench press, incline press,
Push-ups.
push-ups. Or
Yep. Yep, or like even like a sled push is great because it's like you're getting some upper body push and you get a little bonus leg activity, so that's nice.
Yeah. Pull, rows or pull-ups.
Yes, rows, pull-ups. One that is another kind of like backpacker one that's fun to do is a bird dog row. So like if you're on all fours and then you kick one leg back and then do the row with the opposite arm, you get some core in there, which is nice.
That's awesome. You mentioned the step up, and then you also mentioned the carry. Okay, so you've got all the tools in your tool belt, guys. If you can afford a through hike, I think it's probably worth spending the $25-$30. Hopefully you've got access to that kind of a gym. I know 24-hour fitness out here is about that price.
Yeah, check the cancellation fees for the really cheap
That's
ones.
true. That's a good point.
And the contracts. So you mentioned for the pre-trail for the weights, it's good to go to 70% of the max of words that make sense. Is there a way for, let's say now this hiker's been doing that, they go on trail. I feel like a lot of people get injuries from hiking too far too fast. Is there a way to find out what 70%, for example, of your max daily mileage you could be hiking so that you don't push yourself to that 100 where you could then get injured?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like yes, but it could be a dangerous tool because ultimately like things that people don't consider when they start a through hike is like any big change. So like even if you just move, right? Like you move from Denver to Golden and you're in a new house, like your body mentally and physically takes at least 2 weeks to adapt to all of those changes. So you're in a bit of a state of stress when that's happening, and so your recovery is down a little bit. And so no matter how good a shape you are when you come into a through hike, that first 2 weeks you really want to be like kind of considering that buffer of my body is taking this all in. I'm not used to this. No matter how much time I spend in the backcountry, this is still new. And so that's going to decrease recovery a bit because ultimately injuries happen when their load exceeds recovery. And then when you think of like professional athletes, this is an analogy I use a lot. Like Michael Phelps is working out all day, sort of like through hikers are working out all day, but then he's getting 10,000 calories, a nice bed, a massage,
$1 million worth of treatment from state of the art.
Cupping for fun, sleeping in it like at least 10 hours probably. And then through hikers are like, let me have this Snickers and lay on the ground in my tent, flap in my face all night. So like recovery gets like pretty low. And also like you take like 1 day off a month, which is another thing that is like underutilized, is like rest days.
When we talk about it like this, it just sounds like a bad idea.
Oh, right.
Like, should we all stop hiking?
Right.
I hate backpacking.
But at the end of the day, it's like somehow works. But that's like, bodies are resilient, and so like they do adapt to the stresses put on them. And so it's like finding that starting point. Like I would just go conservative in the start, because if you're like comfortable and you're pretty sure you could hike 20 miles right out of the gate and be fine, I'd probably start with 15. Like I would start with something that feels objectively fairly easy until you get past that like first 2 week hurdle, and then like start to bump it up and go more of based on like how you feel in terms of if you're waking up the next day and you're just like dragging and like feeling really fatigued, like you're overdoing it. And so like using kind of a dynamic barometer to sort of pin your miles would be the better move. So kind of dancing around your question, but like
it's good. The answer is enough of like, I mean, there's not going to be an answer, right? You can't find a percentage of, what about talking about those first 2 weeks and ramping up the mileage? What about in terms of planning 0 days? Because I know, especially when I was on the AT, I wanted to save my 0 days because on the PCT I had blown them all in the beginning, and it was like I ran out of PTO at work type thing where I was like, God damn it. So on the AT I was saving them, and I'm wondering if there's like a recipe for how many zeros you should take at the start of the hike if either you're new to it or you're unsure, to make sure that your body is recovering extra when you're saying that recovery is depleted.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, like, it's not ridiculous to take 2 in a week. Like, if you, like, on the PCT specifically, like, you could take a 0 in Julian, and then you could take another in Idlewild, and that would be, like...
2 good places to take a little time off, too.
Right?
Doesn't suck.
The PCT kind of sets people up for success in terms of zeros, in the sense that, like, the towns aren't great after the desert. For, like, a pretty long stretch. They're not, like, desirable places to zero.
Yeah.
And so I always just hit people with the experience to try to get them to zero. I'm like, just zero in all the desert towns, and then they get a good ratio. But then they also, like, zeroed in the better towns.
Right.
But I think using them a little bit earlier is more advantageous. Like, if we're looking at, like you're only going to take this many per trail, like maybe a little higher concentrated in the beginning, but still not exceeding like I definitely would take at least 2 a month, which is like even silly to say, because like look at marathon training, right? Like the other big mileage form, you take like 2 a week.
Yeah.
So like, and also I think people underutilize just taking a whole week off. Sometimes, like, if your body's really tired and you're like halfway down a trail and you're just feeling really beat up and like you can't bump your miles up, take a week off. Like, you're allowed.
So there's always a phrase that goes around, like, hiking circle. I don't know, like, what hiking circles mean. There's a phrase that I've heard multiple times that goes around that is every day off trail takes 2 days on trail to recover from, which is basically like for every 0 you take, it's going to take you 2 days on trail to get back into that swing of the rhythm. So
is that a physical rhythm or a psychological rhythm?
Like just the mental flow of it. Like I'm in the groove,
Yeah.
So I would worry about taking a full week off just for the aspect of it making it so much harder to pick back up again.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, like during my hike, we had 3 separate 5 days off, in part because I hiked in a high snow year, so it was kind of one of those like, where are we gonna rush to? There's snow everywhere. But I mean, largely we were really uninjured because we kept taking this time off. But yeah, when you first get out, getting in the groove sucks, but like a mental like roadblock isn't as hard to get over as a physical roadblock, in my opinion. So like it was easier to just sort of like feel like we had to take a few days to get our rhythm back, but we could ultimately do that, than to physically feel so beat down that now we're also mentally drained because both aspects are kind of faltering,
What cues or symptoms should someone look for if they're overtraining in a thru hiking context, aside from the obvious, like injuries or a screaming acute example of something that is going wrong? But there's a lot of warning signs that lead up to that. What should someone look out for?
Yeah, so things like not being able to sleep, like being overextended in a physical way, and overtraining will sometimes lead to a lot of like really restless nights. And then things like migrating pains are typically like just part of thru hiking. So I always say, like, if a pain moves, it's probably not a big deal, especially if it's not there the next day. Because everybody experiences that, right? Like for 2 hours, you're like, wow, my quad hurts, and then it just stops. But if you're like constantly getting migrating pains, like that's not normal. So like intermittently getting it is just sort of the thru hike experience. But like if every day something is moving around and hurting, you're probably overextending. And then just being like cranky. Yeah,
sure. I've experienced that. And I relate that to probably not eating enough food. And I see this a lot for other people.
Yeah.
I don't struggle with this as much anymore, eating something I'm good at. But I've just doing what I do through the trek, I see people have the eureka moment of like, once they increase their calories by 500 or 1,000, like all of their problems go away. I'm curious, how much do you delve into the nutritional side of things? I know obviously your training is specifically for exercise. And
yeah, I mean, to an extent, like a lot of times in injury recovery, we'll talk about like increasing protein can help with like injury recovery rates. And then just like making sure you're actually getting nutrients, like eating a vegetable in the week if you can get it.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times, I don't know if you guys heard of Backcountry Foodie, but we'll refer people to her stuff because, I mean, she's got it all nailed down. So if someone's like really having nutritional problems. And sometimes I'll see orthopedic things that are actually a nutritional issue. Like I saw a hiker last year who had tingling in her hands and feet, and it was a B12 deficiency. So
is that
like
why that happens?
sometimes it's other stuff, but a lot of times that could be a sign of B12 deficiency. And
Was she vegan?
Vegetarian. So she ended up getting like a B12 shot, and she was good. So
Is that something you can offer out of the van?
no.
So this is going to be the most disjointed interview. That's not true. They're all disjointed. So this is a normal interview. It's important to bring in the context of your own backpacking experience into this, which we kind of bypassed. So I know your first thru-hike happened, was it shortly after you graduated from physical therapy school?
Yeah, so basically I graduated in December of 17 and then just worked a ton until like September-ish, and then moved into the van for a month to get that last little bit of money savings, and then went out on the long trail and did like a fall long trail hike, which I have mixed feelings about. It was really wet and cold.
What time frame?
It was like mid-September to mid-October,
Okay.
and I was southbound. So it like snowed on our last day. My sleeping bag failed. I was like using hot hands to survive.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What are the temperatures that time?
It got down to like 12.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did around the same time frame, but I went northbound. I finished the first week of October, and I actually wish that I would have finished a little bit later, because like I feel like I didn't get peak foliage.
Really? What year did you go? Man, you to get
This would
hit
have
with
been
snow.
19.
Okay, 19.
Yeah. And I actually remember it was either the first or second full day. I was so dehydrated from sweating so much. It was hot. It was like in the near 80 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what I'm gathering from this is there is no consistency in the fall in Vermont.
Yeah. I mean, when people ask me for like a climate report out here in Colorado, I'm always wrong, because like every year is so different.
Right.
So I don't know what normally happens, but I can say what happened during my year.
Yeah.
Cool. So you did the long trail. I feel like that's the perfect testing ground for a physical therapist, because that's the ultimate ass kicker of a trail.
Oh God, it was. And then going southbound, starting with like that northern chunk, I was like, wow, am I even in shape? Like,
Yeah.
12-mile days were feeling like we did something. And
For
then,
sure.
Yeah. But I had done, I guess I did a little through hike in Pennsylvania before that. It's called the Laurel Highlands Trail, which is kind of like a little gem in Pennsylvania. It's like 70 miles, but I had like no good gear. I like had sweatpants and like a snowboarding jacket. I just like took whatever I could hodgepodge together, because I'm like, do I like backpacking?
Yeah, right. Good place.
Coming out of PT schooling, are you like, and I don't mean to other people, but you to yourself, are you fun to hike with to yourself, or are you just like diagnosing everything you do?
I feel like I've been pretty fortunate in terms of injuries. Like I had an injury on my hike, which was a part of my like aha moment in terms of people needing help. But generally I've not really struggled with stuff, and maybe that's just like from training. But I don't know. I think I'm pretty good at turning my brain off, unless I walk behind somebody who's like substantially overpronating, and then I'm like, oh, I want to fix that.
Do you say something, or are you just like biting your tongue?
So like during my through hike, I like kind of kept it just like if you asked, I would tell you I was a PT, but I wasn't like walking up to groups of people and being like, hi, I'm Morgan, I'm a PT.
You're walking funny.
Yeah, like you look like you're having a hard time. In part because everybody had pain, right? So like if I came up to groups of people and I was like, I'm a PT, and also like a new grad PT, I didn't even know if I knew anything, then I wouldn't have like met anybody organically. I would have just met like people's injuries.
Sure.
And then I would have worked on my vacation.
Yeah.
So wasn't trying to do that, but
I feel like that's one of the very few scenarios where unsolicited advice would actually be appreciated.
yeah, every once in a while, like I saw one girl that like she just like couldn't keep her pack on, her shoulder was like killing her, and she was talking about how her shoulder was killing her. And then obviously like my immediate trail fam all know I'm a PT, and so they're like, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then I had a girl that had like anterior tib pain, like shin pain, when I was in hiker heaven dealing with my own foot injury. And so we were just like sitting next to each other on the couch. I was like, let me look. Like,
Show me your feet.
Yeah, I'll tell you my thoughts. But I'm
show
like,
you mine.
but please don't broadcast this to the room of 100 hikers.
Yeah.
Like,
So Is it difficult to take your own advice in terms of physical therapy stuff on trail? Because I know that's true for a lot of professionals. Like they have all of the knowledge, but like when it comes to applying it to themselves, they fuck up.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, when my foot started hurting, my brain was like, it's broken. It has to be broken. And then like I like cried and walked for like 20 miles until I got to hiker heaven. And then I was like, okay, maybe I should like eat a meal and shower and then assess my foot like it belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, right.
And then I had cuboid syndrome, which is just like a little bone that gets tilted. And so I showed one of my hiking partners how to do a whip and get it basically back, and then it was completely better.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this. So there's a condition where your bone gets bent the wrong way and it's not broken.
It's just like a little tilted because your foot's basically like a bag of bones. And there's like a lot of little ones in there, and they like should all kind of move and work well together. And then if one gets a little stuck, it's like a very sharp pain.
Chance jumps every time you do that.
Just thinking of it being tilted. It's my favorite injury to see on trail because I'm like, oh yeah, we can fix this, and then we just do the thing.
Yeah.
I'm also laughing in my head because I'm thinking about calling feet bags of bones and just being like, look at that guy's bags of bones. It's his feet.
I say that a lot to people that are really hard on their feet because like thru-hikers kind of abandon their feet because they're tired, right? So they're just like slapping them on the ground like a bag of bones, and I'm like, that's part of why your foot hurts. Like, soften it up, man.
Chance,
gentle steps.
the old bag of bones.
Yes.
The old, okay, this is gonna be I don't know. Do you want to keep us on track?
Okay.
I've got so many different things.
I have one that's kind of related to what you just said. Actually, I have two. So sorry, Chance.
That's okay.
One of them, we've talked a lot about gaits. You talked about shortening your stride. What about where should someone strike with their foot?
Like in terms of like heel strike or midfoot strike?
Exactly, yeah.
It's pretty variable, honestly. Like different, and that's like one thing that usually comes up in the context of, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book. What's the book that told
Born
everybody?
to Run?
Yes, yeah. That usually comes up in that context.
Yeah.
But ultimately it kind of is like what works for you. So like if you've always been a heel striker and you have not had trouble, there's not really a reason why you should just switch to midfoot. And same thing with like if you are a midfoot striker and that tends to work for you, you don't need to be like coerced to go be a heel striker. If you're getting injuries that seem related to one of those strikes, then we might change it one way or the other. But typically like step length and width is more important than where exactly they strike, because like when people overstride, it's typically a really hard heel strike and like a big foot slap, and that causes a lot of shin issues because you're slapping so hard with your foot and your muscles like on the front of your shin are trying to slow that motion down, so it's really taxing.
Interesting. So is it possible that when people give the general recommendation to land on the pad of the foot, it's that the actual benefit they're getting is they're shortening their stride?
Usually. Because you can have a shorter stride and still roll heel toe, and that may be your best gait.
Yeah.
Or your only way to do a shorter stride might be if you do a little more midfoot. And so it's kind of a small difference in my opinion, especially when you're not running. So like running is like a whole different can of worms, but like with walking the impact's lower anyway, so it's just sort of finding that comfortable spot.
Yeah.
But like width is a big thing. So like if you're walking really narrow and like say you're even like crossing over a little bit, or your knees are crossing, and you're getting a lot of like IT band stuff, it's probably an indicator that A, you might have some weakness in your hips that's like causing you to get kind of knock-kneed, or B, like just you stepping at that angle is making like a sharp angle at the side of your knee, and that could be why it's hurting, so you might just pull it out a little bit. But then I'm always worried that someone's going to hear like go a little wider and then be walking around like a duck. I'm just like, not that far. We're talking like inches.
Yeah. Is there an ultimate test that someone can do to know if their gait is correct, or is this like an example of a telehealth being beneficial? Someone
you can call me.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, there is no wrong gait and there is no right gait, and I think that is like one of the things that like mentally wears on people, is they think there's like a perfect posture or a perfect gait, and there just isn't, because people are just shaped different. Like some people's hips are rotated in, some people's are rotated out, some people are 6'5", like they're gonna have a longer step. So it's just like, it's sort of just looking at injury histories and like any muscle imbalances, and like if that correlates with the way you're walking, then it might be a problem. But like if the way you're walking doesn't seem to correlate with any kind of injury history that you've had or like future have, then the way you walk is probably fine. Because your body adapts to it because you've been doing it your whole life.
Yeah.
To segue slightly to like an abnormal gait, have you heard of baby deer legs?
Baby deer legs? No.
So baby deer legs is when, like, let's say you're in the thick of a long hike and you start waking up in the morning or getting up from a break and it looks like you're a baby deer learning to walk for like the first little bit.
I've heard that described as the hiker shuffle as well.
Yeah.
Baby deer legs is so much cuter.
It is much cuter.
It's
like
adorable. For me, when I'm in the thick of a hike, I get the baby deer legs, especially when I first wake up, and it usually takes me the first 5 miles for the pain to stop. Like it's like hiking until it's numb almost. Like you get that wobble as you're going, and then you're just like thinking about, damn, my feet hurt, and then finally around like mile 5 it stops. At least for me, that's where it hits. Is there something that people can do to combat that baby deer leg? It feels inevitable that it happens because it's just like your feet are so used to moving that when you don't move them, they're going to feel weird. But like, is there ways to make it less like that?
Yeah, I will say 5 miles is a long time for the baby deer legs. Most people, it's like the first hour or so.
It's like it's not the wobbles still. Like I don't still look like a baby deer. I just feel pain.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, like, so one thing that's important to know about pain is that like pain doesn't always equal damage. So pain can just be information. And a lot of times in through hiking, pain is just an overstimulus. So just taking thousands and thousands of steps can give you some pain because you're just on your feet so much. And then there's some swelling and stuff that makes things a little crowded. And so part of like that first hobble is like a little bit of swelling that kind of sits into your legs while you're sleeping because you're not getting the same kind of circulation. And then when you get moving, the muscle pumps sort of clear some of that out and takes out some of that pressure. But then also there's the concept of like habituation. So think about like when you put your clothes on and when you first put a shirt on, you feel it, but then pretty quickly you stop feeling it until you think about it again. And that's just your brain sort of like turning down the input from that stimulus because it's not helpful and not necessary. And so as you walk, your brain starts to sort of turn those things down.
That sounds just right. Is there a way to speed that up?
Sort of. So I guess it's like, it's looking at why you might be getting it. So like if you are really swollen, like maybe you do some stuff at night to help reduce swelling. So the morning you're not as swollen. So you can do like lymphatic massage. You can do like legs up a tree. Don't just take ibuprofen to reduce swelling. That's something that needs to stop.
What do you have thoughts on something like curcumin or fish oil or other natural anti-inflammatories?
Yeah, I think it's a little out of my scope to give too specific of advice. I know there's like fairly decent research coming out on like turmeric and as a replacement for anti-inflammatories.
Yeah, I think curcumin is the specific component in turmeric that is the anti-inflammatory thing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely, if you're out of your scope, I'm way further in left field.
Yeah. I'd say like ass backcountry foodie.
Yeah, sure.
While we're on this quick segue, if you had to talk to someone that understood that you shouldn't take a lot of ibuprofen but still did, is there a safe like number cap that you tell them just don't take more than that each day?
Yeah. So the cap, let me do the math real quick. I think it's 3,200 milligrams per day is the cap.
Yeah, but they don't expect that to be like a hiker doing that every day, right?
No, and you should not. And usually like, so ibuprofen can be a really helpful tool in terms of like managing. I always say like if you are limping, ibuprofen is the time like to help you not limp because the limp usually causes a secondary injury that's worse. So if a little bit of ibuprofen can mitigate the limp until you can get to town and make like a better plan, then that's probably your best use of it. But like you should always take it with food and water. You should never take more than 800 milligrams in a 6-hour window. So like if you did the max dose of like the 3,200, it would be like 8 every 6 hours, 800 every 6 hours. So like never, I hope everyone hears that so loud, never exceed that because more is not better. In that case, you're just going to potentially mess up your liver. But food and water with it will like help with any of those side effects. But like short-term use can be helpful. But even still like, so like the RICE method, right? That used to be like the old injury thing.
Yeah.
Now there's a new acronym called Peace and Love. and it's
It's a
basically
long acronym.
super long, and I definitely can't recite it like you could Rice.
Right.
But it basically like spells out physical therapy because it's like activity modification, progressive load, stuff like that. But part of it is avoid NSAIDs. So like in an acute injury, it can actually slow down your healing because the inflammation has a purpose. And so like inflammation and swelling aren't necessarily the same. So if you are dealing with like a acute tendon injury and it's inflamed and you pound a bunch of ibuprofen, you might ultimately prolong how long it takes to heal because you've put in a barrier to the inflammatory process that was trying to get in there and do something.
Yeah.
How do you tell the difference between inflamed and swollen?
Swollen will just like have not really any pain, and like your feet will just look a little stubby, and then that's sort of like what can lead to some of that hiker hobble is just like the pressure in your feet. Versus like inflammation will be a little bit more warm and more localized, and usually not bilateral, so usually not on both sides, unless you just happen to have the same injury on both sides, which can totally happen. But a lot of times people get it like one tendon on one leg.
Yeah. I know that stuff like ice baths are all the rage right now, but I've heard that they're not to be used like shortly after a workout for that exact reason, is like it'll stunt the response that you get from it.
And like a full body ice bath has a whole different physiological response than like a bag of ice on a knee.
Yeah. And I'm guessing the other thing worth mentioning about ibuprofen is that it should never be used chronically either, right? Because I know there's a lot of negative health consequences from that.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Acute is like if you've got a really painful injury and you need something to manage that pain for a short period of time. Chronic is like I have the hiker hobble every single day, so I take vitamin I, which is the term that people use on trail. And the thing they find with that is it does insane damage to your gut. It causes like internal bleeding. Is that accurate?
It can. Yeah. No, the detriments of it can be like really serious, and then sometimes ibuprofen can cause like it can have a paradoxical effect and cause swelling, and so the thing you're taking it for, it might be causing.
Can we do a quick scared straight where you tell us like all the bad things? Because I guarantee you there's still someone listening to this that's gonna pop it chronically.
I mean, those people might be hard to reach at this point, but like just think like you're tearing up your internal organs is essentially what can be happening. And that's, I mean, that if you're using it in an acute sense, appropriate dose and short term, you're not likely to do that, especially if you're doing it on food and water. Like just safe, smart usage of it, really, like it wouldn't even be on the market if it could do that in such a short dosage on a wide scale. But I mean, if you're taking it like every day just because you think it's like managing your hiker hobble and you're going to do it every day for 5 months, like I would consider other options, because like that might be something that bites you later in life that you don't necessarily see coming, and not worth it.
Yeah. I take pride I didn't use a single ibuprofen on the PCT. I was taking maybe too much turmeric curcumin, but yeah. I was
Snorting turmeric.
do some lines, Trons.
We don't know if there's bad effects of that yet, so.
Yeah. Too much of anything is never a good thing. But yeah.
Unless it's love.
Or walking.
Hey, beautifully said. I could do these questions all day long.
I've got so many.
Yeah. Let's talk. Actually, Trons, if you got questions.
Okay. Well, I was just going to plug this one in while we're still like theoretically in the beginning of the hike, which is where we kind of left off on the like pre-hike, now you're hiking type stuff. But let's talk about when this episode actually airs. It's November 6th. Our
National Nacho Day.
National Nacho Day, and our favorite listeners are the ones that have it automatically downloading by being subscribed to us on the podcast app. And so now it's November, and they want to go hike in March, and they're listening to us because they're like, I just found you in my research. I want to go to the AT in 2024. I'm starting in March. Talking to them as this November listener, what would you suggest to them for the course of these next 4 to 5 months they start to slowly incorporate to give them their best chance of success?
Okay. So let's start from like the feet up. So footwear, figure it out, but be willing to change it. And it's not the same to wear your hiking shoes to work and just like kind of walk around and stand all day as it is to wear them in a loaded pack going up a hill or down a hill. And that's something that bites people a lot, is like, especially with like low drop or zero drop shoes. I hear often that, well, I've been wearing these for like 8 months at work. I'm a server, or like I'm on my feet all day. I thought that I was adapted to them. but they never put on extra load and like went up a hill. And now they have like Achilles issues related to that load drop. And so I would say, like, if you're going to wear a zero drop shoe, especially, you got to have a load and you got to do some hills up and down. And then if you're not going to have a zero drop shoe, you still want to make sure that you're like putting your shoes through sufficient trial and error and then like being open to changing them. And I like strongly advise against buying all your shoes ahead of time. I know it's like so tempting to get a deal, but I can't tell you how many people I've met that like their foot grows or they get an injury or some change happens where those shoes don't work, and they're like, what am I going to do with these 6 pairs of topos in my house?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think, you know, unless you've already done through hikes and like your feet are set and you're like really sure and you're like, this doesn't apply to me, well then okay, buy your shoes.
That's great.
I had a really thin pair of like street running Merrells that I loved to hike in before the PCT, like super thin shoe, and I was like, a pound on the foot's 5 on the back, you know. And so I was like, these are perfect, and I barely made it to Mount Laguna. Like I was throwing them off my feet by the time I got there, and that was one of the things that I was going to buy all my pairs of beforehand, because I was like, I already know I love them.
Right.
Echo that completely.
Yeah, things just happen. And
yeah.
Just to double down on what you said from a not like physical standpoint, I trained for the PCT using exclusively Ultra Olympus, and I didn't experience any pain issues, but even with doing long day hikes for the most of the days leading up to it, when I got out in the context of a thru hike, the shoes just disintegrated. I started with a brand new pair, and they melted in a way that I was not aware of just doing normal like day hikes with a lighter pack. So like even the shoe itself can behave differently independent of the injuries that can come from.
Well, and part of that is like running shoes and trail runners and things like that are meant to have time to rebound, so like resting time, and then they don't get that resting time on a thru hike because you wear them all day, you sleep for 8 hours, and then you put them right back on and keep like pushing down on them, versus if you run or train like 3 times a week, they're getting that rebound. And so they do last longer in that context, which is part of the reason why shoe companies don't have any sympathy for thru hikers.
Sure.
Like if your shoe falls apart, they're like, well, but you're taking it to unusual circumstances.
Yeah. Here's a 0% discount on your next pair.
I'm gonna keep that as a mental, like in my mental arsenal for when I want to take a break, but I like mentally I'm like, you don't deserve a break.
Yeah.
I gotta let my shoes rest. My shoes need to rest. It's not me. I could keep going.
Yeah.
But my shoes need to rest.
Yeah.
Before we move on from the footwear thing, I think it's good to hammer the point that you mentioned you see a lot of injuries related to zero drop shoes. Not saying that zero drop shoes are bad, but I guess I want you to put it in your own words before I say something stupid.
Yeah, I mean, they're not bad. It's just they might not be right for you. And I think that people have a hard time grappling with that. And we were talking about this earlier, that the pipeline to ultras seems to be boots. And I don't understand that, because there could not be a more dramatic shift than going from like 12 mil drop high top boots than going to Lone Peaks.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of like fun things out there like Born to Run and like reasons why we would like barefoot shoes and zero drop, and that's all great, and there's there's a place for that, but it might not be you, like and just like, and that doesn't mean you're not cool. Like you can wear a different shoe and like be successful, but like if you've got really stiff ankles or like a lot of overpronation issues, ideally those are things that you would like work on pre-trail. But I mean, if you're coming in and you're like, I overpronate and my ankles are stiff, like you might need a shoe that's going to help be more supportive, so you don't get posterior tib issues and anterior tib issues and all of the common things with overpronation.
For people that aren't just falling into the category of zero drops, just aren't your thing. Let's say I want to hike in zero drops, but my feet are used to having a shoe with a drop. How would I get my feet ready for that change before it happens so that I don't get an injury from having that difference?
Yeah, so you need at least 3 months, but I would say more like 6 months to a year is a better way to transition and be more gradual about it. But you would want to do a lot of like ankle mobility things and like eccentric heel raises where you like stand on a ledge and drop down off of it and get some load. You can do it single leg, put a pack on, just trying to really like gain strength through the full range, because that's part of what the issue is people are strong through a much smaller range if they're used to a heel drop, and then when suddenly they get that last little dip, they don't have the tendon strength to cover that. So you want to make sure you strengthen through that. And then treat the shoes like a training tool at first. So like don't just wear them every day all day and have that be like a night and day switch. Like wear them for like get a wearing schedule, like wear them 3 days or wear them for a few hours each day, and like try to like build up time in them, and then just kind of gauge your body's response. Some people can honestly like swing from one end to the other dramatically and be totally fine, and those are the people that muddy the water, in my opinion. Like the ones that could basically through hike barefoot or in flip-flops and be fine. They're the ones that make it tough for people to believe that they might have to be more diligent on this adapting. But I would just like assume you need to adapt, and if you end up one of those people, like just be happy about that.
Yeah, do you really want to find out that that's not you?
Yeah.
For people who are scant on time during the training process, this is something that I deal with all the time. Instead of going on hikes, I've got 40 minutes in the day to work out. I feel like running is the best bang for my buck. How applicable is that to both training and specifically adapting to the footwear? Like if somebody does switch to an ultra lone peak, is running productive, counterproductive? Is that I guess, how does that play into this?
I think the hardest thing about running to train for a thru-hike is running is a fairly high injury activity. So like there's some inherent risk in having that be your main training, especially if you don't already run. So like if you've been running for years and like that's like, and you just continue to do so leading up to your thru-hike, that's likely going to be totally fine. But like if you've never run and you're just like starting from scratch and you're thinking, let me run to train for this thru-hike, gonna be your like best starting point.
Yeah.
But it can help you adapt to your shoes and to a certain extent, but the difference in running is like, so think zero drop and like the way your heel comes up when you run, you usually are a little bit more midfoot and you spring off of your heel sooner, so you don't spend as much time with like your heel pressing down. And so a lot of times I'll see people with Achilles stuff who did run to adapt to their zero drop shoes, and that ends up being the issue, is they didn't spend that like long and strong time at that bottom range that like heel drops or like loaded like pack walks would have given them. Because when you put 30 to 40 pounds on your back and you walk, your heel's going to stick to the ground longer, and if it doesn't, you just come up sooner. Now you're just basically doing like calf raises all day with a loaded pack, so either way it's like a lot more stress on the Achilles. So I guess short answer is it can be helpful, but it won't be the only thing. You have to supplement with some kind of eccentric or loaded pack walk if you want that last little bit that gets people in trouble.
If still in the footwear conversation, if someone's starting from scratch and they don't know where to begin with this, I know oftentimes I hear it advised to go to like a running shop and have your stride analyzed. Is that the best course of action? I
think it's good in terms of like taking out the question of like how to pick your first shoe, because like ultimately you gotta pick something, right, to have your starting line, and it might not be the right shoe from the beginning, but like something has to go on your feet. So I find that like small running stores or like locally owned ones tend to have the best staff. And then like if you can find someone who's like got a Podorthus certification, like those are basically like shoe specialists. They're more likely to give you like good information. And then I'm always super skeptical if a shop only carries one or two brands and they tell you need one of those two brands. Like maybe you do, but like also is it just because that's what they carry? So like go somewhere with variety so that you actually get like a kind of less bias option.
Also, we were chatting about this before we hit the button, that you and I are both Hoka users. Is there a way to know if someone is well suited for a Hoka style shoe, like something with a fatter midsole? I'll start with that. Yeah.
So when it comes to shoes, like the fatter the midsole and the stiffer the midsole, so like fat and stiff, those two factors can be what determines if the shoe is like more or less stable. So think of like if your foot is tipping inward or outward, like the thickness of the midsole and the stiffness are those factors that are going to be controlling that. So if you have a really neutral foot and you're not tipping inward or outward, you might not need something as beefy to be controlling that motion. And even if you look on their websites, like if you went on Hoka, you'll see in their shoes it'll say like, is it neutral support, is it extra support, or like however they phrase it, and that's what it means. Is it helping to control you going in and out. And then but if you have a really neutral step, you probably don't need as thick unless you just like the comfort of not feeling every rock, which is why I'm a Hoka fan. But then the other thing that's cool about Hoka is the rocker bottom. So sometimes, like if you do well in a lower drop shoe, like a 5 mil drop that Hokas mostly are, but you have like kind of stiff ankles or like a stiff big toe, the rocker bottom can kind of offload that in the same way that like higher drop would without raising the drop. And so that like forward like rolling momentum can be helpful. But then some people, that forward momentum makes them feel really off balance, and they feel like it just makes their whole gait weird. And then like the thick midsole does decrease proprioception, so you don't feel the ground quite as much. So for some, if that's making you like slam your foot into the ground, or you're like rolling your ankles, or you just like you're falling, like things like that, then you might need more of a minimalist shoe in terms of the midfoot.
Question about Hokas. So you guys both love them. Love that for you. They are also very big, I feel like, in just general fashion right now. Like even non-hikers.
Really?
I think,
I think they're so ugly.
They're so ugly. That's the worst part of them.
Girls on TikTok love Hokas. Oh. And these are not hikers.
This makes me like Hoka less.
These are not hikers.
Right?
But
I want to be cool.
I know.
I mean, like, you get people that will buy something just because you see that it's got that traction. So I just want to put in my input as, you know,
the fashion authority.
They're not all perfect. No, listen. So
I'm anointing
I
you
wore Hokas on the Ozark Highlands Trail, and I have never had my feet, I was telling you this before we started, never had my feet in as rough and as bad of shape as I did during that 2-3 weeks on trail. And so my question about that is the opposite something that can happen, where it's like if you go straight to 0 drops, you could hurt yourself? But if I'm used to hiking in 0 drops all the time, and I've hiked in ultras all the time, and I got Hokas because maybe everyone else on TikTok had them, and I saw that a lot of hikers wear them, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. That would destroy my feet. Like, does that make sense that it would obliterate me the way it did?
It can, yeah. And part of it might just be the shoe is too narrow for you, but then also like that proprioception factor. So maybe the extra cushion made you just like smacking your feet harder on the ground. The bag of bones is just hitting too hard. But I mean, ultimately, there is a little bit of too much focus on shoes sometimes, in the sense that like a well-trained body and like a well-adapted to the stress of through hiking and just walking and hiking in general will have less dramatic effects from shoes. But if you're dealing with something like something out of the ordinary, like overpronation or like a weak tendon, things like that, then the shoe can become a bigger factor because it's amplifying it. But one like interesting thing in research of shoes is they have no concrete evidence to support like higher injury rates of any shoe. The like biggest determining factor is comfort. That's like the only thing that maintains consistency in all the studies, is like the shoe has to feel comfortable to you. And if it doesn't, then you're likely to have issues. But then all the other like nuances of the shoes, like certainly people have issues from them. But is the issue the shoe, or is the issue the weak Achilles? So
you just got to get the Cinderella situation. You got to find the right shoe for you. There's no right shoe for everyone.
And pray that the company never changes how they make it.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Yeah. And then also like manage all the other factors, right? So like get the right shoe, but then don't come out on your first day and walk 48 miles unless you're trying to set an FKT or something. But like most people aren't.
Yeah. The thing that originally drew me to Hokas, because of the big midsole, I've got really junky knees, torn both ACLs, of missing cartilage in both knees. I just rationalized that the extra cushion would help take some of the pressure off my knees. Is there any accuracy to that?
Yeah, in some ways. I think probably the rocker bottom is probably what helped mostly with your knees, if I had to guess, from switching to Hokas. And then sometimes like in the drop conversation, like if someone has really high drop shoes, that can sometimes cause knee pain because you're like kind of up on your toes a little bit more and putting more stress through your knee. But if you have stiff ankles and low drop shoes and you just come up on your toes because you can't keep your heel down in that low drop, it's a similar situation. So sometimes the low drop will be causing the knee pain, and it seems counterintuitive to raise the drop up, but if that lets you sit your heel back down and actually bring you off of it, then that helps with the knee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So we've completely derailed you. Sean's asked an interesting, good question about.
We started with the footwear.
Yeah.
We're working our way up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I kind of just took it as that was what you should do as a November listener, and I thought we were kind of. I thought we'd moved so far past we weren't going to come back.
Yeah. Is it worth going deeper on this? I imagine so.
I mean, so like, as the November listener, the other thing to do is like start increasing your pack time. So like, even if you wear it around your house, like whatever you have to do to like just get a loaded pack on your shoulders, so you start getting used to it and making sure that like A, it's the right pack, and B, you just like build up the stamina of your shoulders and core to like tolerate that load. And then train, like at least if you can do 2 days a week of like any kind of resistance training, even if it ends up being body weight, but like getting through like the full range of motion for things.
Even in November.
Even in November, yeah. Because really like 3 months is what it takes to see like pretty decent gains from an exercise program. So that would take you to like January. And ideally you want to like field any issues sooner than March when you're about ready to start hiking. And a lot of times people will like panic ramp up their stuff in like February, and so I do a lot of like pre-trail injury calls in February because it was like, oh, I don't know, I just like panicked and started going to the gym 4 hours a day and now I have tendonitis.
And shouldn't people just be making weight training a part of their training in general, regardless of how close they are to their through hike? Like, shouldn't this be part of any just like general fitness?
So everyone listening
Yes.
in November,
In November,
no matter your plans,
if you're hiking 18 months from now, I'm just
Zach
saying
says
like,
it's time to get healthy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like in terms of even if you're not going to be through hiking for 2 years, you can't be too soon in terms of adding weight training to your prep, right?
Yeah. I mean, the benefits of like resistance training and like regular cardio are just like undeniable. So for just a healthy life, it's the move.
Yeah.
What's the unhealthiest thing you do?
Unhealthiest thing I do?
Yeah, you seem very like kind of aware of the healthy stuff. I just want to know what your dirty little secret is. Everyone's got one.
I don't know. That seems like a surprise question.
She's like, I eat a lot of ibuprofen.
A lot. Yeah, I just love ibuprofen so much. I take it every day.
Smoked a little crack before I came.
Not in that way, but like, I don't know. I just want to hear that you eat Oreos or you relate to me in some way.
Oh my God, yeah. I eat junk food and I'm like pretty dehydrated at baseline.
Okay,
so like this water hasn't been touched since I've been here.
That helps.
Nah, I mean, I'm just a normal person.
What kind of, oh wait, are we staying on that one?
That's the gist of the November people.
So you talked about how you'll kind of get this hopscotch going with the PCT groups from town to town. Are there things that you see people doing that like just in the back of your head makes you say they're going to be injured when I see them up trail?
People just like huge trail fams usually going to have injuries in the trail fam because they're panic experience is to not let go of that group. Mm-hmm. And so you can't tell me that 15 people are in the same shape starting the trail.
Right. They're never hiking at the speed of the lowest common denominator.
Never.
Yeah.
And so a few of those people in big trail fams are definitely going to have issues related to going too fast too soon. And then sometimes it's just like, I don't want to like weight shame because like people can totally like, and I mean like pack weight shame, people can totally hike with heavy packs and be successful. So like you don't have to be ultralight to be successful, but some packs are just unbelievable. I mean, I've like had no idea until I started like being at like the beginning of trail and stuff that like, I mean, people have like 80-pound packs. And so sometimes I think they might have trouble, but sometimes they don't. So,
do you have thoughts in terms of training using a loaded pack versus a weighted vest? Like, does the way that the weight distribution changes play a significant role in how well prepared they are for backpacking?
Yeah, I think ultimately, as long as you do something, because I always try to avoid giving people like decision paralysis, right? Where they're like trying to do something perfectly and then they end up not doing anything because they don't know what the best option would have been. Mm-hmm. So like if you have a weighted vest and not a pack, like use it. But ultimately, like in terms of it, when looking at like components of training, specificity is a big part of it. So like you want to do things related as closely to the activity as you can. Like if you're training for basketball, you should play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you're not going to be any better at basketball. So like hiking, same thing, do things that are as similar as possible. So like a pack, the way that weight pulls you back and the way it loads your shoulders and hips is different than a weighted vest. So like if you could get the same load out of both and you have access to a pack, I'd probably pick the pack.
So you would put a weighted vest in a pack if you had the pack rather than just wearing the weighted vest?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably.
What about stretching? I feel like this is something that, like, everything that I was taught in gym class in high school is now wrong.
Yeah.
What role does stretching play, and can you differentiate stretching versus mobility, static, dynamic, all that good stuff?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to laugh about is I get a lot of people that are like, can you give me the perfect stretch routine that's going to save my hike? And I'm like, no, because it doesn't exist.
Is stretching bad now?
So stretching, the bad rap of stretching is people are doing it instead of other things. So like back pain is a great example of this. Like people just want to stretch their back pain, but like mostly it's like we need to get you stronger. Like we need a stronger back, we need a stronger hip, we need, like my favorite analogy is like we need a bundle of sticks instead of one stick because it's easy to break one stick but not a bundle. But they're so inclined to just stretch the one stick and then just only ever have the one stick. And so it's like it's in one of those cases where it should be an and, not an or. So like strength and stretching, not stretching and that's the end game. So that being said, things like you have to look at your goals, right? So if you're trying to get more muscle flexibility, like say your hamstrings feel tight to you, if you did single leg deadlifts or any kind of eccentric hamstring strengthening activity, you're going to gain more flexibility faster plus strength than if you just sat and stretched your hamstrings for, a minute 3 times, which is like a normal dosage.
Sarah, you need to clip that. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Because I think that's exactly the thing, at least that I grew up thinking, is that like stretching is the most important thing, but you can get the benefits of stretching by lifting weights, assuming that you're able to get the full range of motion, as opposed to just doing like a static stretch for a minute.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's more of a neurological thing than a muscle shortness thing. So like our bodies are pretty good at protecting us from getting into sticky situations. So like if your leg is not strong enough to resiliently like go up over your head, your nervous system is going to reel it in and give you the sensation of a tight muscle so you don't hurt yourself. But like a great example of muscles not being too short is I've watched hip replacement surgeries, and they'll take a 90-year-old and put their leg way up there, and there's no way they could do that consciously. But if their muscles were just short, it wouldn't go that far. But their nervous system is out of play whenever they're under anesthesia, so it's more so that protective mechanism is gone, so they can move that leg that far.
Do they do that to people when they're under
yeah.
anesthesia?
Yeah, if you want to get down.
Grandma's doing the
taking
splits.
photos.
Yeah, depending on the type of hip replacement, that is something that happens. The leg goes pretty high up there. It's a little daunting.
Wow.
If you ever like just want a weird day on YouTube, just watch some like joint replacement surgeries.
Zach immediately starts typing.
I think this is a scene out of Austin Powers where like like both of his legs.
Yeah. So his nervous system's not worried at all about where his legs go. But so like eccentrics are going to give you a stronger and faster way to like get the nervous system on board with you moving through that bigger range. But like stretching can also have some nervous system effects. It's just the amount of stretching it takes to truly gain flexibility is a lot. Like look at people who are like seriously into yoga and how flexible they are. They're doing a lot of stretching, like a lot of yoga,
for
more
years.
than like 30 seconds at the end of a workout. So, and a lot of that stuff is like strengthening too with their stretches. So it's still getting that like static hold. So stretching, if your goal is you think your muscles are too short or like you just can't reach as far as you want in some way, eccentrics should be a part of what you're going for. If the joint feels stiff, which is really common in like the ankle, then you should be doing things like mobilizations, which is targeting like the joint itself and the bones. And mobilizations can be compared to like wiggling a tooth. So like where a stretch you like get to the end and you hold it, a mobilization like wiggling a tooth is where you keep moving it back and forth and you're trying to get a little further each time. So like I have a bunch of videos on ankle mobilization stuff, but like going knee over toe and like like rocking back and forth and going towards each toe and sort of giving it some overpressure. That's an example of like a joint mobilization.
Do you make YouTube videos of these types of things?
I do, and I'm trying to make more. YouTube trolls have been something I have been diligently avoiding, but it's going to happen this off season is my content
Don't
creating.
read your comments. Best advice I can give you.
Oh man, it's something.
Yeah.
But I have more on like Instagram and TikTok. Instagram feels like a safe space, and nobody better ruin that for me. But it's like I mostly know the people that follow me on Instagram at this point, so it's like I put a lot more there. But I do have a lot of plans for putting more stuff on YouTube this off season. So.
Yeah, I stopped reading my YouTube comments in 2018.
That seems great for your mental health.
It's really the best thing you can do. And I think you have some things that could be like potentially valuable to put on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just make a, before you need to, just make a decision to not read your comments.
Yeah. I've already had a few funny ones where it's like I'll like put modifications of like a single leg deadlift and get comments like, I would hardly call that a deadlift. I'm like, no, that is what it's called. Like that's objectively what
People
it's
are
called.
so mean.
Yeah, and like foot videos get censored, which is so really something. Like I'll get like age restrictions on like a plantar fascia taping video, and I'm
So
like,
weird.
oh god.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am this off season. I'm not taking a job, like not working like a travel assignment, and so my like whole focus is like telehealth and content stuff. So more coming.
Is there an issue with, in regards to stretching, creating too much range of motion where the range of motion that you're adding from stretching doesn't have the strength to stabilize you?
I think that mostly applies to people with like hypermobility issues, and that's more of like a pathological problem that people are pretty certain that they have. But I think for the average person, just stretching, you're not likely to run into that too much.
Okay.
But stretching in its most helpful capacity is to like help with like muscle relaxation, and like it's best served on a through hike kind of at the end of the day. Especially if it like helps you sleep, like it helps kind of like unwind things and make you feel loose. And my advice usually is just to like at some point in your day you should go through the motions you're not doing while walking, like reach up, like put your hands over your head, like twist your spine a bit, bring your knees to your chest, like bend over, just like think of every movement that you would do in a normal day that you are not, because you're upright and moving like in this very small range. And if you just kind of, and I do a video of that, of a stretching routine that covers those things on Instagram, but if you just sort of like intuitively go through motions you're not doing, that's going to help make you feel more balanced and sleep better.
Yeah. It seems like stretching in the context of a through hike makes sense because you're doing this repetitive thing for 12 or more hours per day, and you're neglecting all the weightlifting stuff. This is the question that you said that you hate being asked, but like knowing that somebody's just doing the repetitive walking motion all day, every day, are there like a couple of stretches? You mentioned putting your hands over your head or reaching over your head. Are there other things like that you recommend?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So the ones I have in the video are things like child's pose. So that gets you bending your hips all the way, bending your knees all the way, and reaching overhead. So that like combines three good things. Thread the needle is another good one, which you can either kind of do from child's pose or go on like all fours, and then you sort of reach under and then up, so you're twisting your upper back, because not twisting is something that causes a lot of the shoulder issues or like the mid back pain that people get, because you basically strap a board to your back all day and then you don't reach or turn. So like moving that part of you is helpful. And then ankle mobilizations. So even though you're using your ankles all day, especially in the PCT with it being so graded, I see so much shin pain, right? It's like probably the biggest thing. And part of it is like you're just not pushing the ankle through its full range very often. So like periodically just like working it to make sure it stays truly loose is helpful. And then like quad stretching can feel pretty good. I tend to just go for like lay on your stomach and pull your foot up towards your butt, and then that kind of gets the hip flexors too, which is nice. And then nerve flossing is something that people do pretty well with. So like sciatic nerve glides is something that's in that video, and then like something anybody could rabbit hole. You should not feel any burning, numbness, or tingling when you do these things.
What does this mean? So
your nerves have a component of mobility just like your muscles do, and they run basically from like your head to your toes. So you can floss your nerves to maintain their like nice fluid motion through your body, by basically like, the motion looks like laying on your back, those are just one version of it, but putting your hands behind your knee, and then you can either like flex your foot and then just bend your knee and straighten it, and that's one version of it, and it's kind of a tensioner because your foot stays flexed. Or you can go up with like a partially bent knee and like point and flex your foot, and then you're just taking like the end of the nerve and just sort of like tugging it and moving it. And that can sometimes make, like, if you have restless legs especially, or like sciatic issues, that can make that feel pretty good.
That was actually my next question. It's the last one I really feel strongly about, which is one of the most annoying things that happens to me while hiking is I get restless legs at night to the point that it wakes me up. So I'll go through several nights of bad sleep on trail, not because I couldn't sleep, but because my legs will spasm and it'll wake me up, and then I have to fall back asleep again.
Yeah.
How do you, like, what can you do to help restless legs?
I think nerve glides would be an interesting place for you to start. And then, like, if you feel like your legs are swollen, like lymphatic massage, which is like essentially like petting a dog. So you like start at your foot and move up towards your hip, and just the pressure's light, so you just see like skin movement and then let go. So you could add either of those two things. Some light stretching might be fine. A lot of times it's people's hips that are getting all knotted up, so like doing things like while you're cooking your dinner, maybe like sit in a pigeon pose and see if you can loosen that up. And then looking at your sleeping position. So sometimes if you're a side sleeper, especially if you just put something between your knees, that will help, especially if the source of your restless legs does feel like the hips, which I don't know if that's your experience, but that seems to be the most common that I hear, is like it's centering in the hips. Putting something between your knees can help get you out of that like kind of crossed position where your knees are coming towards your midline, and putting some stretch that might be uncomfortable. And then if you lay on your back, sometimes putting something under your knees so they're like propped up a little bit and bent. You don't need to elevate your legs while you sleep, though. I get that a lot, where people are like, should I try to like prop my feet way up? And I'm like, I mean, you're not, this sounds like you're going to sleep terrible, which the trade-off of that is definitely not worth it. Yeah. But I mean, if you can sleep well and your feet are way up in the air, then I mean, great.
Let's talk about, unless you've got more questions based on
that. That was my biggie.
Okay.
There might also be a nutritional aspect of that too.
That's like you highly possible.
Yeah, you might need a lot more protein before bed just to help with some muscle recovery. And then, I mean, there could be some kind of deficiency, like you could be missing some sort of nutrient there. Pistachios are a really good thing to eat before bed because they're fat and they've got some protein and they have a lot of melatonin.
Those are great to pack too. The ones where they already come deshelled, those things rock.
Yes.
The honey roasted.
Yes.
Let's talk about gadgets or tools that someone might carry for injury prevention or whatever it might be. So give me your thoughts on, we talked beforehand about the rheology,
yeah.
The little cork ball, or some people will use like lacrosse balls. What's your take on those as tools?
I think they're great. I think part of their benefit is like, you know, you're acutely aware of the things you carry, right? And so if that is in your bag serving as like a self-reminder to like give yourself some self-care, like do take a break and like roll your feet out, or like stretch a little bit, do some mobilizations, elevate your feet, like whatever is the thing that helps you the most. If that physical reminder creates that habit, that's amazing. And then also like people do really well with rolling their feet out. It does seem to help a lot of people. My advice on that is like, you don't need to brutalize your feet, because some people will be like, yeah, you just gotta roll and just dig in and like go as hard as possible, and it's like, you're already stepping on a lot of rocks and like your feet are pretty beat up. So like think more of like let's desensitize your nervous system. So like, you know, back to you put a shirt on and stop feeling it, like gentle roll your feet on the ball and just get some blood flow and get some like desensitizing going on. And then, you know, you can hit other knots and stuff with that too. So I think those, like any kind of ball, but like the cork ball makes sense, right? Because it's the lightest, and also Rheology is a great company to support, so that's great. But any kind of ball I think has some merit. If you have a lot of upper back issues, or like shoulder, or like you feel like you just need someone to like kind of crack your upper back, you can take 2 balls. In some ways tennis balls are a little bit better for this because they squish a little. But I've had people do them with 2 Rology balls and just layer up some socks over it. And then you can basically make like a peanut and put that like on either side of your spine. So like your spine would be down the center of the 2 balls. And then you can do like arm circles or like little reverse sit-ups and things, and that can loosen up it's just like a thoracic mobilization. So that one can feel really good. But if you don't typically have any upper back issues, then you might not need to carry 2. But if that notion is like, oh, that's me, like that's something to try for sure.
So what is the mechanism that is actually giving the relief in these scenarios? Because we talked beforehand that there's a misconception that the fascia is being broken, which is totally off base. So like, what is the thing that's happening that causes the relief?
Yeah, it's a lot of like neuro stimuli. So like just sort of triggering some pressure receptors and getting like kind of resets in terms of like the input of that nerve stimulus. Especially like even like a cavitation or like a crack like in any joint or your back, like that's sort of what happens. It's more like a reset. It doesn't like if you reset something like that where you've like decreased the pain and given it that sort of temporary like good feeling, to use layman's terms, and then you follow that with like good movement, that good movement that you followed it with, that's the good stuff. Like that's what makes the change. And so sometimes these things just like open the door for those things. So like if you roll your feet out and then you walk without limping and without hobbling, like that's the good stuff, but it might have been the door opener for it, if that makes sense.
Would it be the same answer for like a foam roller? Yeah.
Foam rolling also, like people do it a little too long. Like especially like on the IT band, that's the whole like you can't break up fascia thing. So like if your IT band hurts, like roll the muscles, like roll the lateral quad, like the outside of your quad, and like your hip muscles. Spend more time on that than like the actual band itself. Like maybe a few passes down the band, but like 20 minutes on that band is just gonna hurt.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever foam rolled in my entire life was at Chet's place in New Hampshire in the Whites, 1700.
I love Chet's place.
Yeah. And someone had a foam roller there, and it was so painful on my IT band that like I remember my eyes were welling up. Like I was starting to tear. It was so painful.
Yeah.
That's an instance where I'm doing too much too quickly.
Also, like it should hurt because it's not like meant to take that kind of pressure. Like there's not a huge benefit to it, so it's just like torture.
I was just torturing myself for no reason.
Yeah, kind
cool.
of.
Good to know.
Kind of like
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
Some people carry foam rollers instead of cork balls because now there's like some lightweight foam rollers, and I mean like it's kind of just like whatever's your jam. Like what are you going to actually use, and then like what feels the best to you. And then other tools that people carry are like mostly like tape is the other main thing I see people carry, and I like
KT tape.
KT and Leuco tape, yeah, and they have different like purposes. So like generally speaking, I would use Leuco tape more for like bony issues or fascia issues, and then I would use KT tape more for like tendon issues or muscle issues. And I don't KT tape anything above the knees usually. Like I don't KT tape backs or hips. There's certainly like techniques for it. I just personally don't think that it's got a lot of merit unless it crosses a smaller joint and can like give more springy leverage. I really don't think that if you put like an X on something with KT tape that it's doing more than like drawing attention to it, which might be in that like placebo effect sort of stuff, which has merit. I mean, the placebo effect can do a lot. So if you like love to KT tape your back and that's like your one thing that makes you feel good, like go off, keep going. But personally I think like it's the most helpful if you have like an ankle thing, like a anterior tib, and we like get it up across the top and it helps with like that foot drop motion, like that kind of thing.
What about topicals, something like CBD or the whole spectrum?
My go-to response to topicals is if it works for you, then keep doing it, because there's not strong evidence behind really any topicals. Like I'm sure you could find a paper that supports any singular one, but can you find 10 papers, and can you find big study groups? And it's not often that you can. And then like there's some transdermal meds, like some people use Voltaren, which is just like ibuprofen that's topical, but I think an internal NSAID is going to be more effective than a topical in most cases. And you can also overdo it if you're doing a topical NSAID and an internal, which I don't think people know. So like back to that, like don't do harm to yourself with ibuprofen. That's like something to consider. Like you shouldn't be doing both of those at the same time. But I mean, and then I think we talked a little bit about like CBD, and CBD is like hard to get a barometer on because there's such variability in brands and concentrations. So like it's really hard to say if there's effectiveness there or if it's placebo, but people certainly like express feeling better with it, and that's where it's like, okay, if that's working for you, then go for it.
Yeah. Even snake oil helps some people. That's the placebo effect.
Honestly, it does. I had someone tell me not too long ago that someone gave them a vial of water from Mount Shasta and it healed their like chronic tendonitis, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get a bottle of that in the van. You never know.
Right. So you're saying you don't believe in the healing powers of Mount Shasta water?
I mean, I'm gonna spend the whole winter there, so I'll let you know.
She comes back radiant.
Right. Just float into the room.
Yeah. Are there any of these topicals or supplements or gadgets or anything like that that you personally use and swear by, whether it's rooted in good science or not?
No. I mean, I carry tape and I've used tape. Like with the cuboid issue that I had, one of the things I did was make a cuboid sling, which is so like a bony issue. So I picked leukotape, and I just made like a sling that like pulls up on that bone to help support that. But then this is a nice disclaimer on tape from personal experience. You can become allergic to tape even if you are not already, which I learned the super hard way.
Are you allergic to tape?
I'm allergic to leukotape if I wear it. I can like apply it to people and it's fine. It's not like I can't touch it, but like I can't put it on my feet and go hike in it.
How do you develop that? I want to avoid that.
I don't know. I just think I'm not one of the universe's favorites. But I think for me it happened in Washington. And so I really think that something, and that seems to be a pretty common experience, is wet tape. And especially wet tape that gets wet and dries several times in like that particular piece of tape cycle. It tends to be more irritating to people's skin. So usually like if we are using either Leuko or KT tape, it's a 3-day max, and then sooner if you start getting any kind of like redness or itchiness or anything like that. And then if it gets wet repeatedly, then that also cuts the lifespan down. Like if it gets wet more than twice, it's kind of where I've been like landing on it for people to keep their skin safe. Because like I think that was ultimately what made mine problematic, was it was just wet and on my skin, and then the adhesive, and I like lost the whole back of my heel. It was gross.
Wow. So I usually like, this is bad for me, but I usually like part of the thing I love about leukotape, one of the many things I'm obsessed with about leukotape, I love leukotape, is like you can put it on something where like, let's say you have a really bad blister and it stays on for so long that by the time it comes off on its own, the blister's completely gone. Like there's no sign that it was ever there because it's been stuck to you for so long.
Yeah.
And
like,
that's not good.
Yeah. And I mean, if that's working for you, I think that's fine. Like you obviously don't have like adhesive sensitivities, so like that should be fine. And a lot of people are like that. It's just like if we're doing an injury tape with leukotape, we're going to cover a lot more surface area. So we're going to be like more on the cautious side, because like if we do plantar fascia taping, we're gonna cover the whole bottom of the foot with tape.
Okay.
So like if you have an issue, you're gonna have a bad time, versus if you have an issue and you like wrapped up your pinky toe, it's like, well, yeah, it just sort of backfired a little.
That kind of jogs free this question, probably something that we should have asked a long time ago. What is your take on insoles? Is this just like footwear in general, where it's like you got to find the thing that works for you, or are you a proponent of using second market insoles? Because I know the ones that usually come with shoes suck.
Yeah, so some people don't need it. Like if you have a neutral foot and you're like not getting any kind of issues, like you're probably fine with just the stock ones, because like your foot should be strong enough theoretically to just hold you up and be good. But if you're getting things like your foot's getting tired and your arch starts collapsing, like a little boost can help. The thing that people usually do the most wrong with insoles is like, if they have really flat feet, then they'll be like, well, let me get high arch insoles to lift my flat feet. And that usually is a recipe for disaster, because now they've got this hard mound that they're just beating on all day. So that usually never lasts. And then if you're overpronating, insoles can be helpful, but then they can also create, again, a hard mound that now when you ever pronate, you smack into this hard insole, and now you start to get like bruising on the navicular bone that sticks out. So there are definitely instances where insoles make a big difference for people, and then there are times where people just like pick the wrong insole and then cause a problem that wasn't there before. So it, again, kind of like footwear, it depends, like what's like, you don't at default, everybody doesn't just need insoles. But if you have some reasons where insoles are benefiting you, then just picking the right one is the move from there. But yeah,
I think that's my last question.
I feel thoroughly
You don't
informed.
have any, like, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings questions?
Those were great questions.
I know.
They got
I
complimented
can't participate because I
moment.
don't know the references.
I don't know either of those things.
Okay.
Okay, you guys can bond over that. No, I'm good. But no, I thought this was very informative. I thought,
Definitely.
and I also thought it was unique enough from the other ones we've done where people can get new info from both. if
Totally
they're
agreed. Yeah.
Super conscious about
Yeah.
themselves.
This has been awesome. Let people know where they can do the telehealth, where to find you on trail, what the future holds for Blaze Physio, the full 9 yards.
Yeah, so most things you can find on my website or like get to from my website, which is just blazephysio.com. And then I'm the most active on Instagram at the moment.
Is that just at Blaze Physio?
Yeah, just at Blaze Physio. And then same thing like TikTok, YouTube, it's all just at Blaze Physio, Facebook. I do some like Zoom chats for PCT hikers in Yogi's Facebook group. It's like the planning logistics or something like that tagline. I did some in last year's group. One was on like footwear, like a deep dive. One was on training, and one was on just common injuries and like kind of recognizing and making good decisions kind of thing. So I'll probably do stuff like that again this year. And then I'm gonna beef up the YouTube, so stay tuned for the YouTube.
If you're listening to this, leave her a nice comment. Just
Yeah.
like a friendly something.
Yeah,
Friendly
I
little
would
ditty.
appreciate that. Yeah, and don't say anything weird about feet. Like, don't do that.
Keep that to yourself.
And then, like resource-wise, I have the PCT Injury Trends ebook, and I have a training series that's like home-based with bands, loaded packs, and dumbbells. And it's just like, I basically made it with the premise of I wanted to give injury information, but not make someone sit through hours and hours of me talking. So we work out for 50 minutes, and then we talk at the end for like 10 during the cool down about like 20 different topics. And then, yeah, they're all home-based, so that's on my website if that's something that would be helpful for people in their training. And then eventually, hopefully this off season, I'll have ThruHikers Guide. I finally got a trademark for ThruHikers Guide. So I'm going to have a ThruHikers Guide series of like the common injuries, so you can kind of like work through them like pre, post, or on trail, depending on like where you're at. So all
Awesome.
those things.
Well, this has been very informative. Thank you very much for fielding our insane questions, as always. Yeah, all those links will be included in the show notes as well. But Blaze, thank you very much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
To the Trek propaganda portion of today's show. This is / reminder. We should have done this at the top considering we're both rocking it. But we've got some very cool retro t-shirts available in one color. If you're watching us on YouTube, you got to see it in action for the entire interview. But yeah, Chance, how would you describe this?
These are fun.
Yeah.
They are 80s roller rink.
Miami Vice.
Barbie without as much pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got an 80s party to go to, or you just like, I love the 80s, that whole stuff, these are for you. They've got a mountain. They've got a subtle Trek logo in it, but mostly they're kind of like a retro vibe, bright neon-y colors, and just different from anything we've done before. Limited run. We probably won't keep this active on the store forever. Unless we decide we are going to, but
Yeah, definitely not forever, as is the case for all the shirts that we do. So if you like what you see, definitely act on it. Good Christmas holiday gift as well.
yes. And if you're like, what do these look like? I don't watch you guys on YouTube. Just look at the episode post that's going to go out this week on Instagram, Backpacker Radio. We are both donning them in that as well.
Yep. The other one I want to touch on is a news story, which you probably have heard, but just in case not, this title will give it away, as it always does. Hiking couple killed by grizzly in Banff National Park. I'll just read the first paragraph here. 2 hikers and their dog have been killed in a suspected grizzly bear attack in Canada's Banff National Park. According to a post by the park at approximately 8 p.m. on Friday, September 29th, authorities at Parks Canada Dispatch received an emergency message from the couple's Garmin InReach indicating a bear attack. Weather prevented a response by helicopter, so a wildlife-human attack response team responded on foot. You want all the details for that one, head to the link in the show notes. Not a fun story, but something worth sharing. And I mentioned the ThruHiker Survey, so we'll skip that. But if you ThruHike this year, head to the link in the show notes as well. Okay, question of the day. This is yours. I'll let you take it.
Yes. What is something that you need? I put the weirdest thing because mine's just kind of like funny. But what's something that you need that you just refuse to let yourself buy?
Yeah. Mine is, I think, visible by the state of this office is I'm always very reluctant to buy furniture in general, but the thing that is well on display both here and my at-home office / guest bedroom is storage for office stuff. So my office is chaotic. Like I've got merchandise kind of spilling over in.
Why don't you use that room?
Because I don't have access to that room. I pay for this room.
Yeah, I know, but can't you pay for that room too?
I could. Yeah, it's not necessarily a space issue. We don't inventory that much stuff. This problem could be solved by just me getting more shelves or something to better organize stuff. But yeah, it overflows. It looks insane and chaotic. And there's a very simple solution to it. I just don't like spending money on furniture or storage.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Mine is funny because like it's on a one-off, it's fine. But when it goes on for as long as it goes on, it's like, come on, you know? And that's buying new hiking shoes. Because for me, I don't want to buy a new pair of Ultras and waste the fresh tread not on a hike. Because I am the type of person where I will wear my hiking shoes. Like, I just already don't want to replace them. I'm you with storage with that. But I'll just wear them way past when they should be worn until I physically can't. And it's just, you know, then I'll get a new pair. So when I get a new pair, like, should I have gotten one when I'm not starting a long trail? I know I'm not going to get a fresh pair to start that trail with. I know whatever state these ones I allegedly, hypothetically get would be what I would wear on the next hike, no matter how near or far in the future it is. And so what I do instead of buying new shoes is I like get cheap options instead that I know will be fine. Like hell, I've walked from Mexico to Canada. I can do a 4-mile hike in shoes that suck, right? Like it's not going to kill me. So all the hikes I've done this summer have been in Target Skechers. Like after the Ozark Highlands Trail, because I thought those Hokas would be great. I didn't like them. That's personal. But now I won't buy a new pair of Ultras because I'm like, I don't want to waste the good tread.
Yeah. I don't think that's crazy. I actually think that makes sense.
Good. That makes me feel a bit better. But I was editing photos the other day and I was like, you could see the giant S on my shoe because I'm wearing Skechers.
No, I definitely get shoes dedicated for non-backpacking adventures. And I have like a relatively new pair of Hokas that I almost never use for the exact same reason. I'll occasionally use it for trail runs just because like if the tread is a little bit sketchy, I want something with a good grip. But like road running, walking around, simple day hikes, I'm using just like a crappy pair of shoes.
The part I see it as becoming ridiculous is if I know I'm doing the AT like March 2024, fine, hold off.
Wait, what?
Surprise. If I don't know when my next hike is, like not to say I'm never hiking again, right? We know it's going to happen. I'm going to come up with an idea and go. Same with the Ozark Highlands Trail, right? But like, if I don't have something like that on the calendar, what am I waiting for? You know, I really should just get a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
So
I think that's ThruHiker brain.
It's trending on social right now. It's like you've seen guy math. This is girl math. Have you seen those videos?
No.
Girl math is, there's so many examples of it right now, but girl math is, let's say I want to get an expensive purse. And it's like way more than my budget affords. But I'm like, if I use this purse every day and the bag is, $600, if I'm using this bag every day for 2 years, then it's $1 a day. Then it's actually really cheap. Then I've actually saved, it's girl mathing it out in your head.
Yeah.
I think this is hiker math, where it's like, if I can save not using the new tread for one more trail and I can get away with these Skechers, it's that kind of like logicking it in your own brain type thing.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Usually your stuff is very crazy, but I think I agree with you on this one.
Cool.
Let's do the Triple Crown and this one is mine, so I'll introduce it. It's very simple and to the point. This is the Triple Crown of little things that make you irrationally happy.
Okay.
You want to go first?
Yeah.
I doubt we're taking each other's with this one.
Baby animals.
Okay. That counts.
Because I was at first going to just go with otters, but then I was like, what about little penguins? And then I thought about puppies, and I realized it's just all small animals. Does
that include
not
humans?
Small adult animals, but baby animals.
Yeah. Does that include humans?
Other people's babies are getting cuter. Like, that's how I can tell I'm aging.
Yeah.
But it's been a slow progression of, and I don't have my own to look at to see if this is just like an other people's thing, because it's not mine. But other people's kids are getting cuter.
Yeah.
There was many years where other people's babies just didn't do it for me.
I was never into babies until I had my own. So
Yeah.
definitely understand that. I still like your baby way less than I like my own.
But I probably would still take a baby animal over, like, in terms of what's going to be cuter, it's probably a baby
Infants
animal.
are not the most adorable thing. They get cuter at around 6 months. My first one is, let's go with when you're running late for something and you hit all the green lights along the way.
It feels so good.
Yeah, that's like you're in Mario Kart when you just get all the right things. You get the mushroom and then you get the star. Like, it's just like fate is working in your behavior and just using you as a springboard to push you faster. That one always gets me. My second one is, I'll make it hiking related. When it's hot out and you're being cooked alive by the sun and you're approaching a steep climb, you get that intermittent overcast and just cuts out the sun and drops the temperature by 20 degrees, fate interjecting to make it less miserable. That is one that definitely turns my frown upside down.
Yeah, sneaky little breeze.
Oh, breeze is huge.
A sneaky breeze, nothing can
Sneaky
beat.
breeze. Maybe that's what we should have called these shirts.
Yeah. Oh, why?
I don't know. I feel like blue is breezy.
Okay, these are our sneaky breeze shirts. Okay. My next one will be, this is like everything coming together at once type thing, where you're all either going into town, a day out of town, somewhere in the vicinity of town, and no one wants to be the one to be like, should we just zero? Because you all want to maintain that we're not zeroing mentality, but you can kind of tell that everyone kind of wants to. And then there's this moment where everyone like lets up a little bit and they're like, should we just? And you realize you're not forcing anyone to because everyone already wants to. Pure magic in that moment.
Yeah.
Because then you have more fun on the zero too, because you all actually want to be there.
Sure.
Those are just great moments.
Yeah, surprise zero. It's kind of like when you get a beer unexpectedly, like it's in the middle of the workday and you're having a meeting and someone else suggests a beer, like, yeah, let's be dirty. Let's have a beer right now. The surprise element always adds a nice little flair.
Yes. Last one I'll go with is waking up naturally minutes before your alarm. Like, I love waking up and seeing that it's 5 a.m. and being like, oh, I've got 3 hours left to sleep. Like, that is a great feeling, right? If I wake up at 8 and my alarm goes off at like 7:30, I'm just giving hypotheticals here, and I naturally wake up at 6:50, I'm kind of pissed because I can't. It's not.
You're too anxious to
close
go back
enough.
to bed. Yeah.
And I could have gotten that sleep, but if my alarm's gonna go off at 8 and I wake up naturally at 7:57 and I just roll over to see what time it is and I don't have to hear that alarm,
Yeah.
that's a good day starting.
Totally. And if you wake up 40 minutes before your alarm goes off, if you do go back to sleep, I think it's something like we sleep in 90-minute cycles. So you would wake up in the middle of the deep sleep, and like that's when you wake up groggy.
Yeah,
and just
that's no
shitty.
good.
Yeah. Leah wakes up crying 100% of the mornings.
Again, the 5 a.m., the 3 hours before, the middle of the night,
Yeah.
great. Because
Sure.
nothing beats finding out you get another half night's sleep.
Yeah.
But just not as good, I would think. I mean, also good. That can go on the list too.
You are spoken like somebody who is good at sleeping, because there's times where I wake up at 3 and then I get stressed about the fact that I'm not going to go back to sleep, and then I don't go back to sleep.
I'm very bad at going to sleep. I will resist going to sleep. I'll lay in bed and I don't even want to scroll. I'll scroll. I'll find things to do because I don't want to go to sleep. Once I've entered sleep, I will do anything to avoid coming out of it.
Yeah. That's good. Have I done 2? Yeah, I did 2.
Yes.
I guess I should have done both. We went out of order. Doesn't matter. I'm going to go with, for my last one, plans that you are less than stoked on falling through.
Oh,
That's like that's an orgasm for me
Yeah.
at this age. Especially at social events where like I'm already tired and you hear that someone's kid is sick or the weather's not cooperating or whatever million reasons. When the plans, you get the notification
And you're not
that
the
it's
bad
off.
guy.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, that gives me goosebumps. I get so excited about it.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. Any honorable mentions?
When Harper, like, okay, if you are in a couple and you have a pet, when the pet chooses you, right? Because
you also kind of want the pet to choose them.
yeah,
at
you don't want the pet
times.
to not like them. But when it's a choice and the pet looks back and forth and they choose you, power.
Yeah,
Happiness,
sure. Yeah,
joy.
You're still top ranked.
Yeah.
Top dog.
That one I'll put on mine.
I'm gonna go with when you are at a restaurant and all the tables are full and you go in and there's enough seats at the bar, just enough seats at the bar. So if you're with somebody else, there's 2 open seats at the bar.
Yeah.
So you can be sat immediately. This happens to me a lot at the airport where like there's nowhere to sit at a table, but like somebody's getting up to leave the bar. That's always like, I don't have to wait. I would rather sit at the bar regardless.
We also had one happen this weekend, which made me irrationally happy, which was just when you're out to dinner somewhere and they just start bringing you things that you didn't order. And they're just like, oh, yeah, they just had to send them out.
Sure.
Very happy.
Yeah. The Mountain Sun restaurants are notorious, at least in my experience. Like, we always get an extra plate of French fries. Like, they always give us freebies.
Yeah.
That place is awesome.
Well, this was Aspen, so, like, I'm looking at prices on everything because everything's expensive.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they just brought out these apps that I was shocked by how little the bill was.
Hell
and they were
yeah.
just like, yeah, we were just going to send them out. It was the most delicious eggplant I've ever had.
Fuck yeah.
So good.
My last one is just a full night's sleep.
Wait, we already did the honorable mention. Oh, this is an honorable mention.
Yeah, honorable
Got it.
mention.
Thought we were back
My
in the
last
snake.
honorable mention is a full night's sleep, and that hasn't been happening. of late.
Waking up feeling well rested.
Yeah, I don't know what that feels like. I've been consuming an ungodly amount of caffeine.
Oh, here's another. When I think that based on what I've eaten in the day, I should have acid reflux, and it doesn't hit.
Nice.
I get really happy
Nice.
about that.
Yeah.
I've thought that twice during this episode. I'm
Yeah.
like, why doesn't my stomach hurt?
Yeah. Did you eat something that should have caused acid reflux?
I had a very bad tummy night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just working its way out.
I'm just glad that you haven't been gassing up this room.
Yeah, no, it's more of just pain internally.
Sure. We'll skip this segment, the one that's highlighted. Let's go to the mailbag.
Okay. Is this the 5-star review or is this the mailbag? Because you highlighted the 5-star review and you said mailbag.
Well, mailbag is sort of a review.
Okay.
I think this is a mailbag that's being portrayed as a review.
Oh, I had clicked the 5-star. Never mind. Sup, my dogs. 5 stars all the way! Exclamation point, exclamation point. Listen to y'all since the beginning. Your podcast is my favorite thing about Mondays. Looking forward to it every week. If you end up reading this on an episode, I humbly request that y'all play rock, paper, scissors, 2 out of 3.
Shit.
Why did we put this here? Loser shotguns a beer. We
Can we save this for the
keep
next
doing
episode?
you boo-boos. I mean, we really should, but we also, I feel like we can't. We really should.
Yeah, we really should.
We both read this in an email form, and we knew.
I would do it under the condition that we pivot to a shot of whiskey. We haven't broken that thing out in a long time. Speaking of tummies, I don't think my tummy can. First of all we have is 16-ounce beers.
Okay, we will save the beer shotgun for another episode. Rachel, we could tuck this onto different show notes.
Someone will hold us accountable.
Maybe the Palooza one where we're gonna do that anyway.
We've got to be in a vibe for this.
And we'll do the shot of whiskey
'Kay.
for this one.
Love that.
Best 2 out of 3. Loser shotguns a beer.
Yeah. Thank you.
What's bad is we both knew what this email was, and we got until there without realizing it.
Yeah, I know. And then we just got this email
we
too.
both realized it at the same time.
Dummies. Straight dummies.
Ugh.
Yeah. The 5-star review.
Wait, are we not doing that?
I thought you said you want to save it for the next one.
No, we're pushing it off, but doing the whiskey shot to concede.
Oh, you want to do both?
Well, I think that the shotgun's funnier.
Okay.
You know, it's not funny to
I
watch
thought
you
we
do
were
a
just
shot.
going to do a shot. Okay. I guess.
Best 2 out of 3.
Best 2 out of 3.
Okay, but we got to clarify first. Rock, paper, scissors,
shoot.
then you shoot and you
Yeah.
do your thing.
Yeah, on 4.
Yeah. Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Damn it.
Rock,
Paper, scissors, shoot. Huh?
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Ha!
Okay. Well, you got to read
was
the
so
review
afraid.
while I get the shot ready.
Okay.
I knew I was going to lose that.
Apparently you can There's analytics you can do if you can think fast enough, where you could tell based on what someone did what they're gonna do.
Oh, I forgot we had a beer. Is this a?
We have a beer back there.
Oh, it's an empty beer.
Oh yeah, don't throw that out. That's my Bills Mafia can.
Oh, right, of course. Oh,
It's important.
even though your entire defense is Ravage right now.
You're a Bears fan.
Yeah. We're
Ended at that.
We won our most recent game. We're killing it.
Okay. Back on the trail, 5-star review, Ponce VT. Sorry, this may be a little long. It's okay, we've got activities. A few years ago, my wife and I started taking a daily walk. It was nothing crazy long or adventurous, just an opportunity to get outside together and get some exercise. This became more important to both of us when she was undergoing chemotherapy. We walked whenever she was able to, for as far as she wanted to go. Sadly, she passed away a little over a year ago. After she died, one of the only activities that I was motivated to do was take a daily walk. I had an epiphany one day that I should start backpacking. I live in north central Vermont, about 5 miles from the Long Trail. I had not backpacked since I was a kid, but started to do some research, which led me to your podcast. I started listening to your episodes, sometimes a couple a day. They are always informative, fun, and inspirational. So based on your gear reviews, beginner advice, etc., I bought gear, took day hikes on the Long Trail, and just recently completed my first multi-day section of the Long Trail. It was an incredible experience and opened up a new world to me. I plan to knock off a good chunk of the Long Trail this summer and fall. I wanted to thank you for the inspiration, education, and entertainment. Keep up the great work. Bruce, a.k.a. Ponce. P.S. As Zach knows, the Long Trail has some pretty nice privies, so no poop stories yet, but stay tuned.
You build it, they will come.
That was sad, but nice, but also sad.
Yeah, I missed the whole thing. But,
read it again in your free time.
Okay.
Thanks for writing to us, Bruce.
To the Hoffy, thank you for suggesting this.
Keep doing you boo-boos was how he ended it.
That's a good bourbon. Shout out to, what is a Broken Top, something top?
Yeah.
Out of Sisters, Oregon. Good stuff.
Cool.
If you guys want to have your review read on this show, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us any number of stars, just not 1, 2, 3, or 4. And if you want to have your mail read on the show, hit us up at podcast@thetrek.co. Do we have a sticker code for today?
Ooh. Oh, she said something that I was laughing at.
It's been a minute since I've taken a shot. I can feel it like burning on the way down.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Good.
Feels like home.
Nice. Trying to think of something PT related. She said something that was so funny. But I'm not going to remember it. We could do what's the most amount of ibuprofens you've eaten in a day. That's a little not
Yeah, we shouldn't
great.
be endorsing that.
Right, not encouraging.
I want to hear people's atypical training regimens, whether it's on trail, before trail, little things, because we're talking about how some things have a placebo effect, and if they work for you, placebo effect is awesome. That's your own brain's power causing you to have the positive affect. I'm curious to know, and you can make something up, but I want to hear from people what their goofy or atypical, unique training regimens are.
Okay, I like that.
Super big thank you to our Chuck Norris Award winners on Patreon. That is Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting, Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Austin Ford, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop,
Fables.
Christopher Marshburn, Coach from Marion Outdoors, Dane,
Ish.
Derek Cook, Do Good Pantry, Eric Casper,
Friendly Ghost.
Eric Hoffman, Greg McDaniel,
May he bring honor to his name.
Liz Seeger, Max Sukup, Mike Poisel, Patrick Ciancialo, Sawyer Products, Spam, Timothy Hahn,
Solo.
and Tracy Trigger. You can follow us on social at Backpacker Radio, on TikTok and Instagram at Backpacker Pod, on X, Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Chance.
You can find me on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey, and you can get my book, Hiking from Home, a long-distance hiking guide for family and friends, on Amazon.
And we are approaching the holidays. We should mention all 3 of our books make for great gifts. Maybe we'll do that.
Should we do that bundly again?
We can do a bundle.
Still got photos of that.
We'll get that together.
Okay.
Appalachian Trials and Pacific Crest Trails are my books, and would be very grateful for a review, as would Chance on hers. Subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts. Follow us on YouTube.
Hi,
YouTube. We got, especially with today's guest, a lot of good hand visuals when she's describing the stretches and the workouts and all that stuff. So if you want a little bit of a visual aid, highly recommend checking
You
us
can
out on
also
YouTube.
watch Zach lose rock, paper, scissors and do a shot.
That's right. Our following has been small so far, but I would say the benefit of that is all of the feedback we've gotten has been very chill.
Yeah.
We've been getting some nice comments. Some people are listening and getting to vital parts of the show. So shout out to you guys. You guys are being awesome. Thank you.
Here's what I kind of think about is remember like when people leave reviews and they're like, I've listened since the beginning. I kind of liked when it was total shit production when we were trying to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Like you look back and you're like, that was kind of fun.
Sure. We're in those
days of YouTube, I think.
Yeah,
where
definitely.
it's still kind of fun.
People are nice to us.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening and happy hiking.
Bye.